news. How does he do it with his finger? He goes, fake news, China.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Well, evolution is fake news, and so
Yeah.
is old Earth. And so we're going to show that here tonight. The last program got a lot of good feedback. We got a lot of good comments, people blessed by it. So, Sam, we really appreciate you hosting us for this series.
And, I've told people, if you watch the Patrick Bidet, by the way, he has such super high def qualities. If you saw, I mean, I looked like I was Shamu the killer whale, but I'm getting there. But hopefully we're going to reverse. You're going to pray for me, guys. I got to go do my cardio. But one thing I wanted to say, if he brings me back for part 2, I'm going to give you guys a shout out because he wants to do a part 2. He ran out of time. He had 20 more questions, but he was pressed for time. Just give you a little behind the scenes. When I went there, he was pressed for time. When we wrapped it up, he stood up. He looked at his team. He said, "What's my schedule?" So we filmed it Tuesday. He had to fly out Thursday for a business conference. They go, "You leave Thursday." So he looked at me. He goes, "How long are you here?" I was in Florida. I said, "I'm here to Tuesday." He goes, "Can you do a part 2?" I go, "Anytime." So they had scheduled for me to do a part 2 Wednesday, but there was a lot of demonic attacks, a lot of heavy demonic attacks. I was being attacked that week prior, all the scandal, defamation, people lying about me and my situation just to discourage me. He had to go through some personal issues, so he couldn't do it. Lord willing, if they go ahead with part 2, I want to give a shout out to you guys to hopefully he'll bring you on so you can destroy the lie of macroevolution. We need it because the man really is on fire. He really has a hunger for Jesus Christ, really has hunger for Bible. And the guy that was with him, Vincent Oshana, he really has a hunger for the Bible. They don't know the scriptures that well, but they're open to bringing on people that will look. They brought in Wes Huff, right? You saw that. So they're hungry to know scripture because their background, being Assyrians identify as Christians, right? Because if you look historically, one of the first groups that converted Christianity, the Assyrians. So they want to know their roots. They want to know their faith. They want to know Jesus. I can tell you they love Jesus. And another thing, 2 of the most humble guys you'll meet. Don't forget, Patrick Bet-David is a multimillionaire. But when you meet him behind the scenes, no arrogance. Super humble guy. I was really moved by how humble this guy is because in light of all the money he has and all the people he's met, like you said, he had Donald Trump. No arrogance, man. Very humble guy. Vincent and him, very humble. So Lord willing, pray it happens. And I'm skinnier then because, man, I look like a cow. I've been eating like a cow. I'm losing it, Donnie. I don't have the muscle.
You look good. I can see those biceps through that big sweater, Sam. Whatever you're doing, all that coffee, keep it up.
It's the holidays. That's when people eat the most. True. Be careful.
Yeah, for you brothers, it's Thanksgiving. I'm Canadian, so we already had our Thanksgiving. Hey, yeah. How about that?
Important, right? Well, one thing about me, I'm a stress eater. When I'm depressed, some people starve, some people do drugs. I eat because I had to do Thanksgiving by myself. I don't have my kids. So pray hard for me, brethren. We finished the race. That's what we want to do, finish the race.
Amen. Amen. Praise the Lord.
So I'm here to facilitate, man. You got to. Oh, speaking of which, I love to watch your open mics with Matt Slick. Maybe people, I've said this to people, but they probably forgot. One of my favorite guys when it comes to open mic is Matt Slick because he's got issues like me, right? He's got OCD. He's got autism. I think I have all the issues he has, and I love when he gets animated. So I watched the 4-hour one on whether Jesus is the Father, and then this other one, the Trinity, and our boy Inspiring Philosophy came up because one of the brothers asked him, would you debate Inspiring Philosophy on evolution? He goes, yes. And you chimed in and said, and this was 2 years ago, open challenge, you will debate Inspiring Philosophy on whether scientific facts support evolution, let alone the Bible. So I want to put it out there. Inspiring Philosophy, we're calling you out, homie. I know you like to do the yap and gossip and slander route because that's the cowardly thing to do. Man up and defend your views, whether you can defend them scientifically and biblically. You guys will take him on. In fact, if he wants, I'll do it on my channel and I'll moderate for you guys.
Nice.
Well, that's what Matt and I have been doing. We've been keeping busy. Every month we've been doing debates. Evolution on Trial. We just did one last week with a couple of militant evolutionists who talk so much trash, one specifically before the debate, and they weren't talking trash during the debate or after the debate. Eh, Matt? So evolution on trial. Are humans and chimps related? Let's see if there's any science backing evolution.
Speaking of which, that was on Modern Day Debate, right?
Yeah. We just did one on Modern Day Debate. We did another one last month. And it was so bad for the evolutionists, Sam, that if you go look at the comment section in Modern Day Debate, which are 90% anti-Christians, anti-creationists, there's a lot of atheists over there. So we're kind of in the lion's den. And even their own side were expressing how disappointed they were in, right there. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge, the 5 Ds of evolutionist dodgeball.
That's one of my favorite comedies. That's why I mentioned Patrick David, because I told him you need to find people who are experts in a field and let them do their magic and let them stay in their own lane. That's what I was saying. You guys, I don't know of anyone better than you guys. Ken Hovind, Matt Powell. And I say this, I haven't seen anyone better than you guys in demolishing macroevolution and proving the Bible is historically accurate and Genesis 1 is real history. So whenever I want people to learn from the best, and that's why I have you here, I point them to you. That's why I'm hoping in part 2 he'll mention, and I can mention you guys, because you need to be on Joe Rogan, not me. You need to be talking to Joe Rogan because he's got a hunger.
Right.
He's hungry. He wants to know truth. And is it true that he had someone on that kind of rocked him and floored him with how much evidence is there for the flood? I don't know. I haven't watched it, but someone said not too long ago, someone was like blowing his mind with how much evidence there is for the flood.
Yeah, that's a good question, Matt. Maybe you can touch on that. We put out a video that Matt edited, and he took highlights from that podcast with Joe Rogan. And those individuals, Matt, you can see it on our channel. I think it's got a couple million views. And they just blew Joe Rogan's mind with evidence for the flood. Matt, can you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. They got on and they were talking about how the evidence, when you look specifically at North America, shows that the evidence that there was a flood that moved over the entire continent is undeniable. They showed him gigantic rocks placed out in the middle of fields where those rocks aren't indigenous to that area. So they had to have been carried there through ice. Most likely the rocks got on an iceberg, got transported, and the ice tipped over or melted and deposited these gigantic stones. Nobody could move them, especially the thousands of miles that they traveled. That was one thing that it was like shocking to them. And then the other ones are when you go out in the ocean and you were to watch the tides move back and away, you can see that there's ripple marks in the sand. And that tells you how deep the water is over the sand. So what he did is he said, look at North America, and you can see those ripples moving over the continent. And that means that the continent of the United States was under 100 feet to 1,000 feet of water in certain areas. That's insane depth. That's crazy.
Glory to the Trinity.
If you go to the channel, Sam, and type, I've got it pulled up on my end.
Yes,
and type
right
in
here.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I was going to just let these guys know. Here are their YouTube channels. So you go right here, click here, and the Rumble, go there, because I don't know how to do it for Rumble. I'll put the links there. Here's Brother Matt. See, that's my dude. Matt Man, and I'm Fat Man, soon to be Skinny Man, in Jesus' name. Here's right there. See, this is what I was watching right now, brother. You believe it? This is what I'm watching right now. This right here. You have it here as well. So the 4-hour discussion, Matt Slick. And so this is his channel. And, man, you know Donnie's channel, homie, right here, man. Homie, don't play that. And I'll just bring up what you want to bring up. And I just want him to go there, subscribe, learn from them. They destroy macroevolution and prove the Bible. First 11 chapters is real history, and science backs it up.
There's Kent right there.
Yes,
there's our brother Kent demolishing the atheists.
Oh, he's a good man. I love Kent, man. I hope he knows that. Let him know that I got his back, because, you know, that's one other thing why I have a problem with IP, because he platforms XYZ. And I know what it's like to be in that situation, to be slandered, lied about. I take it personally. So to you, tell Brother Kent, I got his back, homie. Homie, don't play that. Now, you want me to share something?
You should have Kent on sometime. He would love to be on your channel.
Oh yeah, reach
that'd
out.
be
Let him
great.
tell him to come on my channel.
Okay.
Email me, and I will have him, and he can even join you guys. I'll have to have him
Yeah,
there.
one day, perhaps for the next seminar, we should have myself, Kent, Matt Powell, and Matt and Sam
Yeah.
all demolishing evolution. That would be quite the seminar.
Matt's getting a lot of heat because he's getting the Eastern Orthodox Catholics all over him.
Well, that would be the perfect way to bring us all together in brotherly love then.
Yeah, man. That's right. We can agree to disagree, man. I have no problem. People thinking I'm a heretic as long as they pray that I get saved at the end. That's it, man. I just want to be with Jesus, man. I want to finish
Amen.
the race and rest. No more taxes, no more depression, no more gaining weight, losing weight, perfect bodies, living forever. But I'll follow your lead. What you want me to put up? Come on, homie.
Oh, I'm excited.
You're
Well,
going first.
I'll go first. We've got a lot to cover. So I imagine the program would be similar to Seminar 1. Halal Hogan, my man. And so I'm going to present for about, you look good, I'm telling you,
Yeah,
for about an hour.
See my
Matt's
love
going to, and Matt, he's going to be blowing your guys' minds with, oh, I love it, Lucy. Yep, I got a whole section on Lucy. It's a technical topic. We're going to be dealing with a lot of anatomy facts. We're going to be dealing with hominins. We're going to save that for after. So it's going to be myself kicking it off. I'll get my screen share ready for about an hour on multiple topics. And then Matt will do about an hour, Brother Sam, on dinosaurs and the flood. And here, I got my slide up now.
Now, mods, if anyone manifests, you know what to do. Block them, because I said I'm going to do my best not to insult people anymore, because I want to be bold like a lion, like these brothers are, and very gracious and cussing people out like they are, because they know how to insult you in a nice way. I'm working. So mods, get rid of the trolls. We have a topic. They're going to show you the evidence of science proves the Bible, and they're going to talk about a host of topics such as dinosaurs. So that's the topic. Get rid of the trolls. So let's do this, Brutus.
Let's do it. I'm excited, gentlemen. Feels like we were just here yesterday for last month's 4-hour seminar. What a great time. Sam, I've been using a lot of the arguments that you taught us during that seminar. Matthew 23, for example, all the righteous blood from Abel. And we just had a speaker from Answers in Genesis that I think would blow your guys' minds. Gavin Cox, Answers in Genesis. He did a 2-part series over the last month with myself. The first program was titled Adam and Eve in Ancient Egypt. Blow your mind how Egyptian culture depicts or touches on the creation story. And then the second part was Noah and the flood in ancient Egypt. And he made a good point that real historical figures, Sam, do not have mythical parents. And so going back to Matthew 23, which was such a great point that you made, where Jesus talks about Abel as a real historical figure. Cain killed Abel, shed his blood. Who is the parents of Cain and Abel? Are they mythical, or would they also be historical? Adam and Eve. And so I feel like, as you said, that helps break, or that provides us a discriminatory point against the old earther, or specifically the theistic evolutionist. So anyways, agenda for seminar here today. We got a lot. So we're going to be kicking it off with demolishing common descent. We're going to be spending some time, probably closer to the end of the show, refuting human evolution and hominin fossils. We are going to be touching a lot on the incredible evidence for young Earth creation. We'll be refuting the critics as we go, getting into things like distant starlight. Dr. Jason Lyle, PhD astrophysicist. We've had him on the program a couple times. And so we're going to cover his solution to that. Dinosaurs and man, can't wait for that. And the flood. Matt's going to be largely focusing on those last two. Okay.
One question about Jason Lyle. He actually is a professor, right? He teaches?
Yeah, he's a PhD astrophysicist. He runs his own ministry now. So biblical apologetics, I think. And so he's not currently acting as a professor in the university sense, but he is teaching. He's teaching creation. He's publishing in Young Earth Creation journals. He's done a great job, Sam, because you might be familiar with the James Webb Space Telescope, and they've got these incredible images of your furthest galaxies, and they all look mature. They demonstrate special creation. Dr. Jason Lau predicted that before we got these images out. He predicted that once we get sophisticated images of your most distant stars and galaxies, that they would look fully mature, fully functional, because if Big Bang cosmology is true, then those most distant galaxies should look immature. They should be in that state of evolving, right? But we don't find that. Oh, it's incredible. And he predicted it. And as Matt knows, Jason Lau, he's a genius. He even predicted what the critics would say in response to that, what their rescue devices would be ahead of time. And he was right. The same rescue devices they employed, he debunked ahead of time. He pre-butted their rescue devices. Okay. Well, okay. So dinosaurs and man, the flood. Evolutionists claim that humans and chimpanzees go back to a common ancestor roughly 6 to 7 million years ago. Now, what I like to do, and this was my approach, our approach in our latest debate on Modern Day Debate, where we debated the question, are humans and chimps related? Why I like to debate that question is because it gets to the heart of the issue. Evolutionists, they assert, it's their position that we are all related through common ancestry, plants, animals. So Sam, Matt, sorry to say it, you guys are related to banana plants. You guys are related to strawberries, mosquitoes. That's what the evolutionary model says. But wait a minute, if we stay as close to home as possible, think about this for a second. If we stay as close to home as possible, the evolutionist says that our closest cousin on the evolutionary tree of life is the chimpanzee. Okay, that's interesting. So when it comes to a human and a strawberry, they say we share a more distant common ancestor way out here on the tree of life. Humans and chimps right here, nice and close in the evolutionary timeline. So if I can show you that humans and chimps aren't related, see that big X there? If I can show you that humans and chimps aren't related, what that means is, by extrapolation, humans and strawberries are definitely not related. So you could actually demolish the entirety of common descent and naturalistic origins by staying as close to home as possible and demolishing ape to man evolution. And so I touched on this in the first seminar, but now I want to go in detail because I've tested this out in many debates over the years. Formal debate wise on this topic, I've had about 100. And we've also done open mic challenges featuring Dr. Dino himself. And so I've been presenting this challenge over the years. I also presented it in our last couple debates. And what we got, as one of the commenters said in the live chat, is we got dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. And it's like a lot of these evolutionists, they can't even see that they're dodging because they've been so deceived and brainwashed to believe that they're related to strawberries. Anyway, so these are the Y chromosomes of humans and the great apes. In a nutshell, the Y chromosome is uniparentally inherited DNA. What that means is it's passed down on one side, which is the father's side. How do you know who's a man, who's a woman? Well, if you're XY, you're a man. If you're XX, you're a woman. So we, as men, pass on our Y chromosomes to our male children. It turns out you can take male Y chromosomes on the planet, trace them back to a single Y chromosomal ancestor. Based on mutation rates, which are fast, and levels of genetic diversity, that last common ancestor was just 4,500 years ago. Wow. That's what the Bible says about the flood, because that goes back to Noah. Anyways, when we compare the human Y to the chimp Y, here's the chimp Y. Right off the bat, it doesn't take a PhD to figure out, wow, completely different. I mean, this is the chimp Y. It's half the size as the human Y. The genetic contents are color coded. So here's light gray. That's heterochromatin. That's this densely packed kind of DNA. And it used to be considered, for the most part, non-functional, but we know that it plays vital roles in nuclear organization, chromosomal stability, and gene silencing. Very important kind of DNA. You'll notice in the chimpanzee Y, it's not there. For the most part, it's not there. So according to the evolutionary model, they've lost the entirety of its heterochromatic arm. So here's the point. When you consider overall gene content, size differences, and architecture, the human Y and the chimp Y, as you can see here, is less than 30% the same. But then they want to tell us that humans and chimps are related through common ancestry. Okay, If that's the case, they're going to have to explain how all of these massive differences have accumulated in 6 to 7 million years. That's the challenge. Provide us a sophisticated mathematical model. Don't just give us mechanisms. Don't just assert mechanisms. Well, maybe these genes were deleted or these were duplicated. We're not interested in just those stories. We're not interested in evolutionary philosophy. We want an answer that's empirical. Notice this right from their literature. This is what I specifically like to do, is I like to derive and formulate my arguments directly from their own literature. Then they can't complain, right? Oh, that's a young Earth creationist resource. Oh, really? Have a look at the title of this source. Again, right from the peer-reviewed literature. And they admit that human and chimpanzee Y chromosomes differ just a little bit. No, enormously in size and gene content. Just as I said from the visual, they say the chimpanzee Y is only half the size of the human Y. Here's the most recent analysis going back to 2024. It's all color coded. You could take the human compared to the chimp in the Y, 26.2%. They're nothing alike. It's because they're not related. It's that simple. Okay. So we got these massive differences. They're not just point mutations. They're massive structural reorganizations, gene losses, transpositions. Okay. These technical changes is what would need to take place. If humans and chimps share a recent ancestor, roughly 6 million years ago, as they say, then such radical divergence in such a short time frame should be impossible without breaking function. Could you imagine that much change in either the chimpanzee line or the human line? What that would do is actually break function. That would result in a high level of genetic degeneration. The Y chromosome is essential for male fertility. You can't change it that much without drastically affecting the creature, like chimpanzees, because they'll try and say that all of these changes occurred in the chimp line. So here are some of the rescue devices and how they're not answering the challenges. So my challenge is, okay, show me, because they can't provide you what that hypothetical common ancestor is. So you got humans and chimps on the tree. They go back over here. They converge on a common ancestor. So that common ancestor was neither human nor chimp. It was a common ancestor between humans and chimps. But they can't show you in the fossil record what or who that common ancestor was, nor can they provide what's called an ancestral Y chromosome reconstruction. So like we see in these debates, we get a lot of just so stories. Well, maybe the chimp lost these genes, or maybe because of sperm competition. Chimpanzees have wild mating habits, so maybe that resulted in a lot of change. Okay, again, this is evolutionary philosophy. We want you to model it. That's what we're interested in, okay? You can't just claim gain or loss without knowing the ancestral state. And notice this, 2010, the Hughes et al. Paper. The ancestral state cannot be determined. They even admit that they can't determine the ancestral state. Storytelling does not equal reconstruction. So what do we have? Or should I say, what don't we have? Well, we don't have a rate-based population genetic model. No critic. So any critic listening, even the theistic evolutionists, like inspiring philosophy, you want to say that we're related to chimpanzees and strawberries. Okay. Show me a sophisticated population genetic model. I want to see the required duplication/deletion rates, required recombination rates, timeline, feasibility. These structural differences are massive. As you saw in the visual, the human Y is twice the size. Guys, it's twice the size. Look at this. 62 megabases versus 30. The chimp is 30. Entirely different palindromic families. That's a specific sequence in the Y chromosome. Loss of the entire heterochromatic arm and pan. Notice this from 2024. Only 14 to 27% alignability. What that means is the Y chromosomes are so drastically different in the human and chimp that only a tiny portion can even align. But the rest is so different they don't have an alignable counterpart. So these are massive differences that no evolutionist has yet to model them, quantify them, test them, simulate them. They have not actually provided a model and proof. Go watch the debates that we've done. Here's a few questions. I've got a whole talk on this. I'll just run through these quickly. How did these massive architectural changes occur mechanistically in 6 to 7 million years? They got no answer. When did these changes occur within the proposed 6 million year time frame? Again, no answer. When or why did they occur? For example, what selective pressures drove or tolerated them? No answer to these questions. So again, no ancestral sequence, no rate-based model. This is enough to falsify their model. And this is all they do right here. This is why they failed. Even the best that they have to offer, like Popular Evolutionists on YouTube, Aaron Ra, Gutsy Gibbon. Critics list mechanisms, but never demonstrate that those mechanisms can produce the required changes in the required time. They complain. They assert that we as creationists don't do the science. But yet we're the ones doing the science. We're the ones making testable and falsifiable predictions. We're the ones that are modeling out our arguments. And they're the ones that are invoking nothing but stories. And that's why I say they dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. That's all we get from them. Until they do, the Y chromosome gap remains a fatal problem for human to chimp common ancestry. And for the critics, here's about 6 questions. What lineage lost what? Again, where's the ancestral Y chromosome reconstruction? And so they can't even address the first 2 in order to move on to 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. So the next point I want to move on to is this idea of junk DNA. If special creation is true, then we should expect the human genome to reflect that. What that means is we as creationists can make a testable prediction. We would predict that the vast majority of the genome is functional. It's important. We would expect genomic treasure, not genomic junk. But if evolution is true, we'd expect junk. What do we find? Again, right from the conventional literature. This is the ENCODE project and subsequent projects. This is not a creationist saying this, guys. These are the evolutionists themselves. These data enabled us to assign biochemical functions for 80% of the genome, or there goes the junk DNA paradigm. What that's saying is over 80% of the genome has biochemical evidence for activity. And that has to be beneficial activity. And I'll tell you why. Because transcription, so you got DNA transcribed into RNA, and then translated into proteins. Okay, that's your basic protein synthesis process. Transcription and translation. 80% of the human genome, so that's nearly complete, has evidence for function. Transcription is an energy-intensive and resource-intensive process. Every time you add a single nucleotide to a growing RNA chain, brothers, that consumes energy. It consumes ATP. So if that 80% was just noise, that's what the evolutionists are trying to say. Oh, that's just background noise. That's not real function. Well, then processes over time should actually weed out all of that genetic baggage. The fact that it's there suggests that it's functional. Okay, here's another example. Pseudogenes, once claimed to be evolutionary leftovers, genetic mistakes, we now know are necessary to sustain healthy life processes in the cell. Okay, if you Google or YouTube, what's the best evidence for evolution? Typically what comes up is endogenous retroviruses. But here's the important question. Okay, they'll say, well, we have these viral sequences that are shared between humans and chimpanzees, and therefore those viral sequences must have been inherited from a past common ancestor, suggesting common descent. But here's the question we need to ask ourselves. Are endogenous retroviruses really the ancient remnants of past viral infections? The evolutionists would say yes. Or are they created units of DNA function? If common design better explains the existence of ERVs, then we should expect what? Function. Okay, so let's see what the literature says. Oh, sorry, evolutionists. 2021, one of my favorite papers. Endogenous retroviruses protect us from viral infections. Right in their literature, what do they say? Long disregarded as junk DNA or genomic dark matter, endogenous retroviruses have turned out to represent important components of the antiviral immune response. So what these ERVs are doing is they're acting as these antiviral programs. They are protecting us from viral invasions. They're helping in the immune system. They work to determine cell types. And so, of course, we're going to share those with the chimpanzee because Chimpanzees also need viral elements to fight off infections and to help with the immune system. Notice this from the secular literature again. They're admitting that if we didn't have ERVs, the placenta and the mammals that produce it, including humans, would have never existed. Here's another 3 papers you can date. There's see, evolutionists are out of date on the literature. They use these arguments, but they're not even up to date on what their own literature is saying on this issue. Increasing knowledge. They even admit our knowledge about endogenous retroviral elements involved in cell immune responses is constantly increasing because we're in the infancy of understanding the DNA language. The DNA language is so complex and so sophisticated that as the years go on and the more that we study it, the more we realize just how functional it is. The genome is 4-dimensional. It comprises multiple overlapping codes, and it's filled with meta information. There's no way the DNA code could have evolved. And all of these DNA elements that they once said in the evolutionist camp were junk are actually turning out to be incredibly functional and essential for healthy cell processes. So asking, why do we share ERVs with chimps in the biological world would be like asking, Donnie, why do all modes of transportation share engines in common? Well, engines are important to get the car moving. If you don't have an engine in your car, then your car is not going to get very far. Okay, so that's good design. Human engineers design in these homologous patterns. Why shouldn't God? And so why we share these ERVs in the biological world is good design, because we and the chimp, for example, both have babies. We both propagate. So we need DNA elements to function in embryological development. Notice this, just noise. This is what the evolutionists are saying. Oh, this is just all just noise. And I went over a couple reasons why it's not earlier. Several lines of reasoning suggest that the majority of observed activity is not random noise. 1, energy cost. Transcription and binding are metabolically expensive. If most transcription were meaningless, cells would be wasting enormous amounts of energy. Natural selection should quickly reduce such waste. In other words, the fact that it's there means that it's functional. Transcription factor scarcity. Only limited numbers of transcription factors are produced. If they were binding randomly across the genome, they would be unavailable for the specific regulatory sites they must control. And we have independent studies showing how important these transcription factors are and suggesting that, no, this is not just noise. Okay. Cells are not sloppy factories. If the genome were dominated by meaningless transcription and random binding, the cell systems would collapse under interference. The better explanation is that much of this activity is functional. And as you can see here, we got functions listed for every single type of DNA element that was considered years and years ago junk. Again, ERVs playing an antiviral role in the genome, functioning and determining cell types, regulating gene expression. And you're not going to get functions in embryological development by randomly inserting viral DNA into the genome of a biological organism, because that's what the evolutionist is going to have to say, that these ERVs evolve these essential functions. But what that would actually do is disrupt genetic functionality rather than improve it, which is why special creation and separate ancestry is the best explanation for ERVs. Now, I've written an entire book on the topic, and I go over a model that I've come up with. It's called segregated design. It's a little too much for what we're doing here in this presentation, but here's a couple quick visuals on that model, and you can see more details on it in the book, showing that we can not only debunk ERVs as evidence for evolution, but we can also offer a superior model. So this is a slide I put together for my closing statement on our last debate we did about a week ago on Modern Day Debate. Every challenge that I brought up, none of them were answered. They weren't even touched. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. Y chromosome dissimilarity that we went through, they just so stories, evolutionary philosophy, no models. Hyoid bone transition, we'll get into that later in the program. Didn't answer that. LMN haplogroups, functional ERVs. These right here are several questions that you can ask an evolutionist that they'll have no answer to when they bring up ERVs. When they bring up ERVs, they want to put you on the defense. My recommendation is put them on the defense. Oh, you think ERVs are good evidence for evolution for why you're related to puppy dogs and chimps? What is the evolutionary pathway by which an LTR evolved? LTR stands for long terminal repeat. It's a functional aspect of the ERV. They have no way to show you the mutation by mutation pathway by which those evolved. Ask them this: how did the preloaded regulatory functions inside ERVs arise in the first place? They won't have an answer to that. How does random viral insertion produce coordinated developmental timing? For example, ERV activation right at the moment of implantation. Any theistic evolutionist, any naturalistic evolutionist, please answer these questions, respond, don't dodge. If you're going to confidently assert that young earth creation is pseudoscience and evolution is real science, then I want to see sophisticated answers to these questions. If ERVs already contain regulatory elements when they assert, how does that demonstrate evolution of new regulatory function? All you'll see is a lot of dodging. So here's many questions, obviously, I've put together on that issue, but now I do want to move on to some of these pieces of evidence for a young earth now that we've dismantled very thoroughly evolution. Okay, as you can see on the slide, the birth certificate of the universe. You might be asking yourself, we have the birth certificate of the universe? Yes, the Bible, God's word. So the strongest evidence for a young earth is actually scripture itself. Genesis is God's eyewitness account. In the beginning, God, that's who created. Beginning is time. Created, that's how. The heaven, there's space, and the earth, there's matter. Time, space, and matter, science tells us, based on the first and second laws of thermodynamics, had to have come into existence from an outside force. And we have an answer to that, whereas naturalistic origins has no answer. Secular scientists have no answer. We have an answer in Genesis 1. God created time, matter, and space. God created the heaven and the earth. And so we have the birth certificate of the universe. God created in 6 ordinary 24-hour days. This is confirmed by Exodus. Jesus Christ himself said that from the beginning of creation, he made them male and female, clearly referring back to creation week, day 6 to be exact. Matthew 23, the excellent point that Sam made, that Jesus refers to Abel right back to after creation, after the fall. Who were Abel's parents? Adam and Eve, real historical figures. Just as we consult history books to learn about historical figures like Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, we look to the Bible for the origin of time, space, and matter. Old Earth interpretations, what they do is they rest on philosophical assumptions such as naturalism and uniformitarianism, but the Bible provides the true record of creation. Okay, let's get into some science. Comets. I love this one. And we're going to refute some rescue devices. I gave a teaser of this in our last program, but this one I'm going to refute rescue devices, okay? So firstly, comets cannot last for millions of years. Why? Well, comets lose material every time they orbit the sun. At observed depletion rates, they cannot survive billions of years. This is based right from the conventional literature. Have we appealed to young Earth creationist literature at all in this first 30 minutes? The answer is no. You can demolish an old Earth and secular origins or evolutionary origins directly from the conventional literature. Okay. So the rescue devices, for example, like the Oort cloud, never been observed, never been detected. So the fact that these comets are moving around in an elliptical fashion, they're losing their icy material over time, suggests that they can't last for millions to billions of years. Refuting Simon Dan. So in the program we did last month, Sam, Matt, and myself, a prominent evolutionist responded to some of it. His name's Simon Dan. He's got close to 1 million subscribers. So he puts out this video. I'm like, oh, let's see how he responds to the comet problem. And there's the title of his video, How to Misinterpret Everything. And he puts an arrow at me. So apparently I misinterpreted everything. So in his video, he invokes, to save the day for deep time cosmological evolution, he invokes two rescue devices, the Kuiper belt and the Oort cloud. XX. Let's show you why. So here's a summary of his arguments. You can watch the video yourselves. He doesn't address the problem at all. So what he does is he appeals to the Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt as if they are observational facts. But the Oort cloud has never been detected. Ask the evolutionist, show me a picture of the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is their lowercase g God. Actually, anybody right now on the computer listening, type into Google or ChatGPT, has the Oort cloud been observed? And it's going to admit no. It's just completely hypothetical, because remember, they can't tap out and say, oh, the Bible's true, the universe is young. Because when you refute, Sam and Matt, when you refute the idea that the earth and universe are billions of years old, let's stick with the earth. They say it's about 4.6 billion years old. When you refute that idea, it's like taking the pacifier out of a baby's mouth, and they're going to start crying. The evolutionist starts crying when you remove time, because to take fish to fishermen, here's the evolutionary story. Non-living chemicals billions of years ago in some warm pond somewhere managed to organize themselves and evolve into the first self-replicating molecule. Then from there, you get single to multi-celled evolution. Then you get the evolution of a fish. And then that fish climbs on land and evolves into an amphibian, and then eventually a reptile and mammal. And what's funny is then eventually that mammal goes back into the ocean and evolves into whales. That's the story. And then other mammals evolve into apes and then humans. What a fairy tale that is. And to remember that acronym, FARM, fish, amphibian, reptile, mammal. Okay. So that's what they believe. But they require billions of years to take their bacteria-like organisms to biologists. So if you actually limit the age of the earth, then that means they don't have the billions of years to evolve a fish to fishermen, to evolve pond scum to people. So again, removing time is like removing their God, lowercase g God, because to them, time can do the unthinkable, to do what we don't observe today, okay? So that's why they're not going to tap out. They're going to invoke rescue devices. Well, maybe there's this Oort cloud out there that's helping to replenish the comets that are lost, okay? So let's continue. Here's why good old Simon Dan's rescue devices don't work. The Oort cloud has never been observed. Why should we even entertain it? Okay, nice. Again, that's evolutionary philosophy. Can you demonstrate it? Can you show us it? The Kuiper belt does not solve the problem of short period. So the interesting one is the Kuiper belt. It has been observed. It exists, but for many reasons, and you can see this right in the secular literature, in astronomy and astrophysics, it can't counterbalance the loss of comets. And I'll show that in a second. Okay, comets decay rapidly. They're too fragile to survive billions of years. Short period comets burn out in less than 10,000 years. Do you know what that means? At best, the evolutionist has 10,000 years for the solar system. Us creationists, that works perfectly. We believe in an Earth and universe about 6,000 to 7,000 years, under the 10,000 year time limit. Oort cloud rescue device, no telescope, never observed, simply invented to explain away the young comet problem, not based on evidence, but necessity. Kuiper belt. So here's the second one they appeal to. It's insufficient. It's real, but you can read right in the scientific literature that there's far too few objects. It's the wrong size distribution. It cannot supply comets at a required rate to replenish the amount of comets that are being depleted. You're going to need this massive reservoir of comets to make their way into the solar system. Comets look young because they are young. So again, Oort cloud, entirely theoretical. Challenge them to show you a picture. We got these massive telescopes. We talked about at the beginning, the James Webb Space Telescope that provided us the most sophisticated, incredible images of distant galaxies. If the Big Bang Theory were true, if cosmological evolution were true, then what we should see in the early universe, billions of light years away, is we should find infant or galaxies that are in the middle of evolution, evolving, yet we find them fully mature, functional, ready to go, beautiful in the same way that our galaxy is, which is supposed to have evolved a lot later. Dr. Jason Lisle a young Earth creationist predicted this before the data came out. It's truly an amazing time to be a biblical creationist. So you can look at the Hubble telescope, JWST, that's the James Webb Space Telescope, Pan-STARRS, Gaia, you name it. Not a single one has detected a single Oort cloud object. And this is the best that they got, guys. Even secular astrophysicists acknowledge that the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Jason Lyle debunked this on our program. He's a creationist astrophysicist, but the important thing is even secular astrophysicists have acknowledged that the Kuiper Belt is far too underpopulated by at least 2 to 3 orders of magnitude to supply the short period comets needed for a billions of years solar system. This is not a creationist claim. This is openly admitted in the mainstream literature. There's a few papers for you. Okay, so Simon Dan, I'm sorry, the Oort cloud, never observed. Kuiper Belt is real, but it can't do the job. If your model needs invisible clouds and missing mass to survive, you don't have evidence. You have a rescue device. It's all theoretical, all evolutionary philosophy. Okay. Next point, decaying magnetic fields. So obviously, we've seen comets, irrefutable at this point. The rescue devices appealing to the Oort cloud, Kuiper Belt don't work. We have Earth's magnetic field. Well, measurements have shown that Earth's magnetic field is decaying exponentially. If the Earth were even 60,000 years old, the field would have been catastrophically strong, stronger than a neutron star, which can easily tear apart the molecules in your body. For that reason, the decaying magnetic field actually limits the age of the Earth, and their rescue devices don't work either. Secular scientists invented a dynamo model of the Earth's core to explain how the field could have lasted over such a long period of time. But this model fails to adequately explain the data for the rapid decay and the rapid reversals that it has undergone in the past. It also cannot account for the magnetic fields of other planets, such as Neptune and Mercury. A PhD physicist who's a creationist named Dr. Russell Humphreys, he predicted what the magnetic fields of distant planets would be before we discovered them, if young Earth is true. Once they discovered those magnetic fields, guess what? You have one prediction here if the solar system is billions of years old. You have another prediction here if the solar system is young, less than 6,000 years. Guess which prediction came true? The young Earth prediction. There are so many predictions. Matt and I could take 3 hours going over the predictions that young Earth creationists have made. It would blow your mind. Carbon-14 in diamonds. This is one of my favorites. This is getting into dating methods. If every atom in the whole Earth were carbon-14, so radiocarbon, they would decay away so quickly that no carbon-14 would be left on Earth after only 1 million years. What is carbon dating? I want you guys to fully understand what we're dealing with here to show why this is yet another piece of evidence that demolishes the billions of years paradigm. And so notice on the visual, in a nutshell, scientifically, C14 is produced in the upper atmosphere due to cosmic ray bombardment. Okay, so you can see up here, cosmic rays bombard upper atmosphere. And this diagram basically illustrates how living organisms are constantly exchanging C14 while alive. Okay, so I'm eating plants, I'm eating animals, plants and animals are taking in C14. And so there's a balance at play. But once you die, you're no longer taking in C14 because you're no longer eating animals, you're no longer eating plants. Okay, so in a nutshell, C14 is produced in the upper atmosphere. Living organisms take in that C14, lose it over time, but we're also taking it in all the time. Once we die, we're no longer taking it in. Now, the half-life of C14 is so short, it's about 5,600 years roughly, that, like the other slide said, if every single atom in the universe were C14, it would have all decayed away in something more like 500,000 years, but just give it to the evolutionists. Let's say 1 million. I mean, they believe the Earth is 4.6 billion. So just give them 1 million. So here's a testable prediction. Anything that we test in the so-called geologic column that's older than 1 million years should have what? No C14. That's simple. Is the Earth old? Is it young? Here's the perfect head-to-head test. Is there C14 and is there a lot of C14? It's young. Is there no C14? It's old. So simple. Watch this. It's going to blow your mind. Let's do the test now. This is an ammonite, a sea creature, was discovered in California, accompanied by fossilized wood. Both fossils are claimed by strata dating to be 112 to 120 million years. When you hear that, millions of years ago, you know that's the start of a fairy tale. Long ago and far away, you were once a fish, right? According to P.Z. Myers. Anyways, so this was supposedly 112 to 120 million years. And we checked it for C14, and there was C14 present, showing that it's only thousands of years old. We found C14 in coal that's supposedly hundreds of thousands to millions of years old. We found it in oil, supposedly millions of years. Basically, anything you test, you know what you find? C14. But if the Earth was old, how does any theistic evolutionist, inspiring philosophy, let's see him address our best arguments. Don't focus on weak arguments. Address our best arguments. Carbon-14 and fossilized wood, supposedly millions of years old. Nope. Suggests thousands. This is the best one. Diamonds. So diamonds are the hardest substance on the planet. They're supposedly formed deep within the Earth, which means they're resistant to cosmic ray bombardment in the upper atmosphere. So they should be resistant to contamination, okay? There's no way that if those diamonds are billions of years old, that they should have C14 in them. Well, geophysicist Dr. John Baumgartner, this is incredible. So we did 2 seminars. There's what's called the RATE project. RATE stands for radioactive elements in the age of the Earth, if I remember correctly. So numerous PhD young Earth creationist scientists, a couple of them, Dr. John Baumgartner and Dr. Andrew Snelling, they took part in this research project. Incredible research project. They made predictions going in. We should find certain things here if the Earth is young. We should find certain things here if the Earth is old. And what they found lined up with the young Earth model. We just did a seminar last month with Dr. Andrew Snelling. He was one of the leads in this project. We went for 3 hours. He just absolutely demolished the old Earth paradigm. Geophysicist here, Dr. John Baum. You see how many scientists we have on our side? Well-credentialed, well-educated, well-respected scientists. Dr. John Baumgartner, he specifically investigated the C14 in diamonds. We did a seminar with him, and I asked him directly these questions. I mean, we got it right from them, okay? Anyway, so there should be no C14 at all in these diamonds if they really were over 1 billion years old. Yet, the radiocarbon lab that they sent these diamonds to, and remember, you can't even tell these labs that you're a creationist because they won't test it. Because firstly, they're thinking, well, of course there's no C14. The Earth is old. Secondly, if you're a creationist and you tell them that, well, they're definitely not going to want to do the test for you because they're going to be worried. Well, if there is a little bit of sort of C14, then we're giving ammo to the creationists. Okay. So anyways, they tested these and there was over 10 times the detection limit. Thus, they had a radiocarbon age far less than 1 million years old. Dr. Baumgartner repeated this with 6 more alluvial diamonds, and these had even more radiocarbon. Guys, the presence of radiocarbon in these diamonds is confirmation of a young Earth. There's no way to refute it. Here are the rescue devices. The first cry is, it's just all contamination. Evolution's true. The Earth is old. We know it. Just believe us because we tell it, we're telling you so. So they'll say, oh, it's all contamination. Yet for 30 years, AMS radiocarbon laboratories have subjected all samples. They know what they're doing, guys, okay? They're not just being guilty of contamination in all these reports. Before they carbon date them, what they do is they subject these samples, guys, to repeated brutal treatments with strong acids and bleaches to rid them all of contamination. That means the C14 that's found needs to be intrinsic, as in it's real C14 in that sample, not due to contamination. Here's another one. Oh, well, new radiocarbon was formed directly in the fossils when nearby decaying uranium bombarded traces of nitrogen in the buried fossils. This is what Dr. Hugh Ross appeals to. If you want to watch a really good debate, Dr. Jason Lau versus Dr. Hugh Ross, Dr. Jason Lau, I mean, he just smoked him on distance starlight. Hugh Ross tried to bring up this rescue device, and Jason Lau shut it down real quick. And it was discussion, too. It wasn't just strict formal, so it was really good. We got to see them duke it out. So anyways, why this doesn't work. Carbon-14 does form from such transformation of nitrogen, but actual calculations demonstrate conclusively, notice this process does not produce the levels of radiocarbon that world-class labs have found in fossils, coal, and diamonds. In other words, to recharge the C14 in these samples like diamonds, you'd need thousands and thousands times the more nuclear material in nearby rocks to recharge the C14. It's just not going to happen. It's a rescue device. Here's another argument. C14 in diamonds and coal can be explained by in situ production through uranium and thorium decay. Coal acts like a carbon sponge. Basically the same argument, but a different way to address it, or a different angle. That explanation doesn't hold up quantitatively. For neutron capture to produce measurable C14 at the levels consistently observed, you'd need thousands of times more uranium and thorium in or near the sample than actually exists. So why I went over that twice is because that's the best they have to offer. That's what your PhD old earthers are bringing up, and it doesn't work. Another one, this is a weaker one, but these guys get very desperate, right? So they're just kind of throwing things at the wall, seeing what's going to stick. Argument. Environmental contamination could have introduced modern carbon into samples. You know, one thing we like to do in our presentations that you might not find everywhere is I like to present the evidence, but I don't like to move on real quick. I also like to address objections and challenges. And because we've been doing this for so long and we've done so many debates, I know all the rescue devices. Sam, for example, when he's demolishing these anti-Trinitarians, when he's demolishing Islam, he not only knows the arguments, he knows the counter objections. He knows the counter objections to the objections. So he can give the argument and refute the rescue devices at the same time. And to me, that's more comprehensive. It helps us to leave no stone unturned. And it equips you guys with not only the argument, but also the responses to potential objections and criticisms. Okay. So this argument collapses under the weight of consistency. Environmental contamination, if real, should be random and irregular, affecting some samples heavily and others minimally. Yet carbon-14 levels are found in virtually every sample tested. Are you telling me that environment is just contaminating every sample at every level of the geologic column in a way that gives us consistent results? Give me a break. Just tap out. This is desperate. And this is why it's very hard. Yes, we get militant evolutionists to debate the science. Clearly, Matt and I, we've done 3 major formal debates in the last 4 or 5 months. But it's very difficult to get a theistic evolutionist to debate the science. They don't know all this. They'll get stopped and then they're going to lose credibility with their audience. Okay. Militant atheists, they got no shame. So they'll jump into the debate coliseum. They'll get destroyed. That's okay for them. Coal, fossil wood, oil, carbonates, and diamonds, all yielding C14 ratios far above detection thresholds, meaning it's not noise, but remarkably similar in magnitude. The uniformity strongly suggests original carbon signal, not random contamination. Furthermore, to contaminate deep, isolated samples sealed within the earth for supposed millions of years, modern carbon would have to diffuse uniformly through kilometers of rock. That's not going to happen, guys, which is geochemically implausible. Detectable levels of C14 have been consistent. Guys, this isn't an anomaly. Oh, well, this is just an anomaly. Maybe we don't have an answer, but Earth is still old. No. Detectable levels of C14 have been consistently found in samples taken from every level of the geologic column. Pay close attention to that. Every level of the geologic column, from coal to diamonds. Because remember, diamonds are said to be the oldest or the hardest substance on Earth, formed billions of years ago. The Earth is only, according to them, 4.6 billion years old. The readings are remarkably uniform. So this uniformity is key. That suggests it's not contamination, or else the numbers would be all over the place. It's uniform and it's consistent because the Earth is young. The C14 is there because the Earth is not billions of years old, because if it was, the C14 would have decayed away. This pattern is far more consistent with a young age for the carbon in these materials than with random contamination or in situ production. The background noise argument. Oh, we've heard this over and over again. When we say that a sample's C14 measurement is above background, that means the detected C14 activity is significantly higher than the known noise level of the equipment. Therefore, it's not just instrumental noise, it's a real measurable signal. Guys, this is a real signal. It's not artificial, it's not noise, and this is a major problem. Why? Well, because the C14 levels detected in these samples are well above the instrument's background noise, meaning they represent a real measurable signal and not experimental error. Here's the conclusion. C14 is present in all these samples because why? The materials themselves are not millions of years old, they're thousands. Why do we have comets, even though they can only last, these short period comets, less than 10,000 years? Because the universe is less than 10,000 years old. Why is there such massive discrepancies and discontinuities in the genetics between humans and chimps? It's because humans and chimps aren't related. Why does the Bible, the birth certificate of the universe, tell us that Adam and Eve were the first two people? The earth is roughly 6,000 to 7,000 years old. That's because it's true. The Bible claims to be the history book of the universe. And as we can tell from all of this data, the science actually confirms and complements what the Bible tells us about our origins and the creation event. Diamonds contain real C14 up to 310 times above detection limits. Powerful evidence they're young, not ancient. I dare a single critic to try and refute this. Notice this, right from the secular radiocarbon literature. You don't even have to trust us. Go to the literature, go look at the dates, go look at the material, and go see that they're finding C14. Here's 10 coal samples. The rate team, they analyzed 10 coal samples, and they found C14 in all of this coal. Here's diamonds. Rate, C14. It's just incredible that the rate team, a group of young Earth creationist scientists, they made these predictions, as in we should find evidence for a young Earth. And that's exactly what we found. Now, a lot of critics, they'll dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge this evidence. And they'll say, well, if there was a global flood, and Matt's going to start touching on that very soon, we're coming close to the hour mark. If there is a global flood, these catastrophic processes, remember, we find massive stretches of sedimentary rock layers that extend over entire continents and even further. And they're a creationist geologist. I have a creationist geologist, Dr. Tim Clary. He's coming on the channel next month. He's had an active research project where he's been correlating these mega sequences on different continents on the planet. And he's correlating them from one continent to the next, showing that they all had to have been laid down quickly, rapidly, catastrophically in a single year. Because your old earthers, they'll say, well, these sedimentary rock layers, they would have been laid down through local floods during different times in the Earth's billions of years history. No, that doesn't work, because we're now correlating these sequences worldwide, showing that these worldwide mega sequences also had to have been laid down at roughly the same time and not millions of years apart. Isn't that incredible? And then in these sequences, we find billions to trillions of fossils that require rapid burial. We find fossils of fish being eaten, fish giving birth. I'm sorry, it doesn't take millions of years to finish a meal. It doesn't take millions of years to give birth. I think they even find fossils of fish throwing up, and they're fossilized in the middle of throwing up their dinner, where you can see the throw up and then the fish. I mean, wow. So anyways, they'll say, well, all these catastrophic processes would release too much heat and energy. This is called the heat problem. You'll see critics all the time. What about the heat problem? Have you solved the heat problem yet? Well, yes, we have. Matt and I, we've run the numbers. We've modeled it out. And any kind of heat that's generated from the flood can easily be taken down into the core of the Earth The core is incredibly hot. Probably wasn't quite as hot in the pre-flood world. It was heat up a little bit more from the heat during the flood. But you'll find a lot of old earthers, they'll say, oh, there's just no way that the young earth creationist can explain all the coal and oil that we find on the earth, because to produce all that coal and oil would take millions of years. But here's the thing, in the lab, we've rapidly produced coal and oil in real time using a lot of heat and pressure. Well, wait a minute. The catastrophic global Genesis flood would have composed a lot of heat, pressure, and energy to rapidly form all the coal and oil, which means a lot of this heat produced at the flood is actually a feature and not a bug. That heat can get the plates moving, catastrophic plate tectonics. You need catastrophic plate tectonics rather than the snail-paced movements of the plates that uniformitarian or actualist scientists believe in to rapidly buckle the rock strata to uplift these mountains in the first place. Okay. We also find testable prediction, these massive slabs of cool rock deep within the earth. Well, if those were taken there millions of years ago or over millions of years of plate tectonics, those cool slabs, cold slabs would have either melted or assimilated in temperature to the surrounding material. The fact that we find these massive slabs of cool rock deep within the earth tells us that they were just taken down there thousands of years ago and not millions of years ago. That's why they haven't warmed up or melted. And that's a direct expectation. If at the flood, you have the fountains of the great deep break open, which release a lot of chemicals to rapidly produce limestone. Okay. And then these plates begin to move. They're lubricated because a lot of that water coming up would lubricate these plates. And they're moving around quickly. So you get rapid subduction. We have plates coming at each other, and then one plate goes underneath another. And so that's taken down. Okay. That's taken down. And it's still going down. And we actually find those today, and they're still relatively cool, which is confirmation of the global flood. And a lot of that heat can actually be taken down through that process into the mantle. So it's not a capacity problem. Earth isn't a sealed oven. It has plumbing. It's a throughput problem. How can we get this heat and energy into the mantle and into the core? Well, we can do it through rapid subduction and downwelling. Advex energy into the mantle and core. It's got a colossal heat capacity. I've run all the numbers through AI. I've run them like 20 different ways. I've included all of the so-called sources of heat. And every time I run them, the numbers come back. We got more than enough room in the mantle, in the core. You'd have miles and miles of water on the earth that would be absorbing or taking up a lot of that heat. Again, the rapid production of coal and oil. The pre-flood world being 95% lush and green would basically act as the perfect battery to absorb a lot of this heat produced during the flood. And then you'd have these supersonic steam jets that would actually take a lot of heat into what? Space. What a great heat sink. Take a lot of that heat into space. And so, here's a numbers snapshot. You can look at deep interior absorbs this amount, the mantle, the core. And so bottom line, there's no heat problem. So next time you hear an evolutionist or an old earther say, oh, what about the heat problem? Young earth creation is false because of the heat problem. No. Bottom line, move it, vent it, use it. The boil the oceans claim, for example, assumes heat stays trapped at the surface, but it actually doesn't. Okay, so the next part of that was fun. A lot of information there, guys. The next part of the presentation will be hominins, the Australopithecines. One commenter about an hour ago mentioned Lucy. So we're going to debunk that, but we're going to do that after Matt's hour presentation.
William Albrecht, I'm convinced, is a gorilla. I think you got the missing link. So I don't know.
I told William to send me a selfie so I can. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know, brother. I think he makes a good case. Maybe we did evolve from gorillas and apes because he looks like a talking ape.
He does bench press about as much as a gorilla. And have you seen those reels where the gorillas are going at it? Yeah. And they're like, zookeeper, help. And he's like, what am I supposed to do?
And he eats as much as, these whales do, but that's another good. Yeah. I'll follow these. By the way, someone asked you, would you have a discussion with, I know he's been made famous by William Lane Craig. Josh Samidas is his name. Do you know that guy?
Yes, he's a theistic evolutionist.
Would you?
Yeah,
down?
yeah, oh yeah, 100%. I've actually put out several response videos to him and
Good,
articles. So I would most definitely
Amen.
have a debate with him. Yeah, 100%.
Thank Jesus Christ, my Lord. He changed my views of old earth creationism. I'm a young earther, and thank God for you guys. You have only made me stronger to trust the Bible. It's young earth all the way. So thank God for you guys, man. Pray we finish
Praise
the
the
race.
Lord.
This forever. Now that handsome dude, that former UFC fighter is next, huh?
That's right. Now, Sam, would you say a lot of what I said, like the C14 in diamonds, the comets, the testable predictions, did a lot of that make sense as to why the young earth model can account for it better than the old earth?
Yeah, you broke up, but I got what you were saying. In fact, I was going to ask you that. So according to them, we should not expect carbon-14 in diamonds if they're more than 1 million years old, right?
Right. That's right.
And yet we still find carbon-14 because you were generous. You said 500,000, but you would give them 1 million. So if something is over 1 million years old, there wouldn't be carbon-14.
Exactly. And
Okay.
same thing goes with coal, with diamonds, of course, with fossils. I mean, we find in dinosaur fossils C14. For example, you can see here with the African diamonds, and you see how it's a nice, easy test, Sam. Earth is old. Okay, C14 decays away so quickly. It's got a half-life of about 5,600 years. Then we shouldn't find C14 in any sample over 1 million years. And like you pointed out, yeah, it's more like 500,000 because it decays so quickly. But give them 1 million. Let's be generous to the
You're a
evolutionists.
good guy like that. I'll give 1 million.
Yeah, you can give them. You can even give them 10 million because these diamonds are billions. And so, yeah, easy test. Do we find C14 and do we find a lot of it deep within the earth, or we don't? Now, if we didn't find it, I'll say, Sam, if we didn't find this C14, this would be problematic for our position. We'd have to work around it. Like, okay, well, how come there's no C14? That is kind of odd. But the fact that we find so much C14 everywhere we look, in every single sample in the geologic column, that's incredible. It's like God gave us this evidence to what? Strengthen our faith and know that his word is true.
Hallelujah. That's why you're seeing the reaction of the people. They're shocked, blown away. And I'm going to ask you one question, and I'll let you take your time. No rush. One more question then. Since these facts are undeniable, and guys, I want you to hear what he said. They're not getting it from young earth creation literature. Over 90% of their arguments, even when they quote a creationist, they'll also supplement it with literature from evolutionists. These are facts from their literature, evolutionists. Since they know these are facts, why the hell do they still want to fight for evolution? If it's not demonic, I don't know what is.
Amen. I mean, they're fighting with their own side. That's why I kicked it off with the Y chromosome and showing that the Y chromosomes of humans and chimpanzees are nothing alike. But I did not once, as far as I know, I'll say 99%, just so I'm not too universal. But for the most part, I'm quoting directly from their own papers, from their own literature. I'm quoting them that are saying they don't have an ancestral Y chromosome sequence. They haven't modeled it out. This is from them. So when these evolutionists on YouTube want to complain, don't complain to me. Go do the work and answer the challenge, because we're sitting here as creationists sipping on our coffee and we're loving life. We're not related to chimps. That's what the data suggests.
Amen. Amen. Glory to Jesus Christ. We made the right decision, folks, to trust the Bible and go young earth. Glory to Jesus Christ. Christ will always be vindicated because he is God, he is truth, and creation is his creation. The Bible is his word. Facts cannot contradict the Bible. So Muscles from Brussels, UFC killer, I'm following you now. Put up what you want to put up.
Whew, I'm sweating. So Matt, there you go. Your hour is up, brother.
Oh man,
blow our minds. I think I got to exit. So let me see. Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Get this ready.
I'm excited.
Right.
Matt. I want to set the foundation. Okay, Sam, you're gonna love this, brother.
Yeah, man, I can't wait.
So Matt, he's gonna be going through a bunch of images. Okay, so evolutionists, you know what they say? Oh, man and dinosaurs. It's nice to see you guys now. I've been screen shared for an hour. At times I'm like, I hope they're still here. So anyways, they'll say dinosaurs and man did not coexist, right? Well, you're going to see that all throughout history, ancient cultures have actually drawn dinosaurs in ancient art. Explorers like Alexander the Great, Marco Polo, even in the book of Daniel, I think, as you know, Sam, it describes a dragon.
Bel and the dragon.
That's right. That's right, brother. And so in the Bible, obviously, Behemoth, Leviathan, you got it. You got it, Sam. So maybe we can run through that later when we're done this. And so you're going to see Alexander the Great, Marco Polo, Herodotus. They all describe these dragons, these serpents. They describe pterosaurs. You're going to see pictures of stegosaurs. It's incredible, which means obviously we existed with them if we're drawing them and describing them. So anyways, that helps to set the foundation. Matt, take it away. I'm excited, brother.
Again, let me remind you guys, they're only touching 1/10 of the evidence. Go to their YouTube channels. I told you that last time. It's linked. Subscribe, watch. This is 1/10 of the evidence. If this is blowing you away, go watch their lectures and seminars that are hundreds of hours in their debates and pass it on to your children.
Yeah, we love these topics. We amass and collect information and study and share it with people and try to make it entertaining at the same time. And like Donnie was saying, the evidence of dinosaur and man is all over the place. But they've never really considered, like, what would it look like? So we're going to start with the weakest evidence and then move our way into the best and strongest. The weakest would always be what somebody says is they saw, an eyewitness of something. So we're going to start with those anyway, because that's still evidence regardless. So the first one we're going to go to was a single survivor that was told to draw a picture of what killed all of his friends. And he drew this, like a Loch Ness type creature, monster. Another one was a 60-foot sea monster seen by Captain Peter and his crew in 1846. They drew another long neck looking type of a dinosaur creature.
Real quickly, you put 1848 on your slide. You said
1846.
You said 1846, but on the picture it said 1848.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. My bad.
He's excited. He's excited.
Yeah.
That tells you I'm listening, even though, look, my eyes look like they're shutting. I'm listening.
You can fall asleep. It's all right. I got a while to go. Here, the observers were two experienced British naturalists that saw what looks to be another long neck type of a sea aquatic serpent, another Loch Ness monster type of a creature. Very strange how they independently keep coming up with this same design of a type of a creature. Here's a Viking woodcutting of a dragon swallowing a man in the 11th century. And I have the quotes if you guys want to look up any of these at the bottom. This is a Palestinian mural painted 100 BC. It's very large, but if you start to zoom in, you'll notice something. It gets a little bit more clear, and then you zoom all the way in, and you'll notice men fighting against a dinosaur type of a creature. They got shields, and they're going after it. Very interesting. Right in a gigantic mural for everyone to see. And inside of it are real animals everywhere else. So that makes you think, like, okay, did they mythologically put in some weird type of creature for no reason at all? But then we can get to ancient cave art and drawings. Here's one in Argentina. This was found in a cave called the Cave of the Hands. And this looks like some type of a dinosaur creature with a ridge going down of its back. And this was very similar to Alexander the Great in 330 BC. Alexander the Great invaded India. He brought back reports of a giant hissing dragon living in a cave that the people were worshiping as a god. The source for that is down here. We also have, that one doesn't, kind of tiny, my bad. Another mural that we can see. I'll zoom in. It's in Israel, and it shows, again, people throwing rocks and using spears to fight some kind of giant lizard. Obviously some type of dinosaur creature, because nothing like that is alive today, except for a Komodo dragon, and there's nothing like that in Israel. Then we have another one from Teotihuacan. I think it's the pre-Columbian era. They showed these two clearly looking dinosaur creatures. another zoomed in image of them. I mean, if they're not dinosaurs, they're horrible at making art with dogs. But when we go to their art on the wall, we see another dinosaur head that literally is much more clear than what they could design in a 3D stone. So obviously, I mean, does that look like a dog to you or a cat? I don't think so. That's pretty dinosaur-like, if you ask me. Then we have brass engravings going back to 1496. Two brontosauruses. Their heads are intertwining, or its head is going around the tail of the other one. Can't really tell. It's kind of faded, obviously hundreds of years old. Then we have the figurines that have been found with people riding a dinosaur, which is awesome. Dinosaurs all over the place. They have very large replicas, gigantic tails going back. This one's, dinosaurs are huge. Very strange. They date back to the 1600s. We have one that goes back 4,000 years ago, almost to the oldest ancient Chinese dynasty, creating an image. Clearly looks like a triceratops. Very peculiar why anybody would make that thing up. And then it just so happens to look like an actual dinosaur later. Same thing with this. Another Han Dynasty theropod dinosaur creature. People will just say, well, it was just a dragon. But that's what we're saying. Dragons were dinosaurs. So another one going back maybe 1,000 years or so, the Zhao dynasty. Clearly another dinosaur-looking creature. Can't think of anything else that would possibly be in the world alive today that they had and they saw. And then here's a very vivid description from Marco Polo. Here we found snakes and huge serpents, 10 paces in length, and 10 spans in girth, 30 feet long, 100 inches in circumference. At the forepart, or near the head, the front part, it's 2 limbs. They have 2 short legs, having 3 claws like those of a tiger, with eyes larger than any 4-penny loaf and very glaring. The jaws are wide enough to swallow a man. The teeth are sharp. I gave that description to AI and said, what is this match? What is this description that he's describing? It said it best matches a large theropod dinosaur, an Allosaurus and the related species. So I typed that in. What's an Allosaurus look like? This is what was pulling the cart, apparently. So very strange that he would depict such a dinosaur pulling his cart in ancient days. Literally dinosaurs alive, just written and described in a very vivid account. Here's another cave drawing somebody found. This one showing the ridges going down the back. When tied up to what creature that could possibly be, again, they narrowed it down to being a dinosaur. Another description we see, not really a dragon, but it's okay. Another version of one. Here's another picture of a dragon that was outside of a castle in London. We have a 4-tusked elephant known as, I don't know, you're going to try to pronounce that. I'm going to butcher that one. This was found in 1837. They found fossils of this creature in the area that were radiometrically dated for the creatures that lived supposedly 1.6 million years ago. And yet humans saw these because they are depicted in an Indian Vedic text. And they said that they guarded a tower in India. So they were something that people literally saw and described and had evidence for. I like that. Another interesting thing is not much talked about because it was written off as a hoax. So we're going to talk about that because this is very interesting. These are called the Ica stones, ICA. The Ica stones depicted dinosaurs with man and very strange things. And when you type in and you try to figure out how many of these stones were there, in a museum, they found between 50 to 100,000 of these. Okay, now remember that because that's really important. And they're on andesite, a very hard stone with a Mohs scale of about 7. Very, very hard stone, and there's a lot of them. Here's a picture of the museum that has thousands of them still to this day. Just images all over all of these large stones. And these, sorry, some are small. I don't know why. But these stones are everywhere. They were being sold by a particular man, and I wanted to find out what is the detail about this. So here, get this. So the famous collection belonged to Dr. Xavier, numbered around 20,000. He had that many stones in his lifetime. The total number circulating today is estimated much higher, potentially up to 100,000. The origin of them is a hoax. The modern Ica stones were largely popularized by a farmer, a single person who sold thousands of them to this person and others, by the way. He said later that he admitted to carving the stones himself using a hacksaw blade to produce the engravings. He claimed he did this so he would not go to jail for illegally excavating tombs and because it was an easy way to make money. So let me get this straight. This old farmer quit farming and secretly made 100,000 stones to sell them to people. And then the police came over to him and said, "Hey, you can't be selling these stones. These are you're stealing these from tombs over here in court and areas." He said, "No. I'm not stealing anything. I'm making them myself." That's all he had to say. That's it. So get out of here. This old man, when did he have time to do this? Between farming and selling them? I mean, they're on a extremely hard stone that you're not really going to cut any. I cut stone. My friend Jake cuts stone for a living. That's like literally all he does. And we go and we cut granite, and we need diamond tip saws, and you're not making one of those in a day. So how does he make 100,000 of them? It's just such a preposterous thing. And then when we look at the stones, it has major detail, and they match what we've seen with dinosaur skin. What are the odds of that? Come on, think of the statistical probability that this old farmer is just making these things out of a hobby, out of his pastime, and drawing things that we actually found to be true. I mean, come on. And he shows dinosaurs all over, all different kinds of dinosaurs, and they have skin with these unique marks on them. Why would he spend the time? I mean, you think that they're going to pay more because there's little circles on the dinosaur? It's stupid. No, you would just be vague. You would paint one with one dinosaur on it and sell it. My family owns an art business, and they don't make more work for themselves for no reason. It's just absurd. So now we're getting into it. So now the fun one. Now we have art, drawings, ancient carvings, the oldest you can get with mankind. This is before handwriting. Remember, they just went over the walls and started drawing what they saw. And here's some dinosaurs. Clearly, what's that supposed to be? A camel? Come on. This is, what else could it be, right? So I'm gonna be showing you art that shows clear dinosaurs, and then what the atheist and secular community says about these types of things. Because some of them are actually even in books. They've wrote and documented these things. Here's a dinosaur petroglyph in Arizona, and here's what they wrote about it in this book. In 1924, the fact that some prehistoric man made a petroglyph of a dinosaur on the wall of this crayon upside down completely, upsets completely all of our theories regarding the antiquity of man. Facts are stubborn and immutable things. If theories do not square with the facts, then the theories must change. The facts remain. Interesting. And look at what they said, though. About a year ago, a petroglyph of a dinosaur was shown to a scientist of national repute who was then specializing in dinosaurs. He said, "It is not a dinosaur. It's impossible because we know dinosaurs went extinct 12 million years before man appeared." 12 million? What? I thought it was 65 million. So look at how the dates have changed that drastically in time. Here, this person goes, "This can't be a dinosaur. Man never saw a dinosaur. They went extinct 12 million years ago. What idiots." While making an idiot of himself by saying 12 million years ago, because today he would be laughed at for how recent that dinosaur was. So see their reasoning? It can't be because our theory says that they didn't live then. It's the paradigm driving your mindset. It's like, well, it can't be true because my model doesn't say that it is true. So we find dinosaurs in ancient artwork in different places all around the world, seemingly drawing the same consistent theme. Here's one of my favorites because the argument against it is hilarious. This is a drawing of a dinosaur. It's very hard to see, but don't worry. The next picture is going to be outlined. You can see it kind of. This is picked into a stone wall with an animal antler. Now, this is the outline of the dinosaur, clearly a brontosaurus. The atheists did not like this whatsoever. They did a whole study on it, and they published this about how it is not a dinosaur at all. They said, what is it? Well, the legs are not part of the image and are not pecked in, otherwise human-made, but are stains of mud or some light-colored material on the irregular surface. What did they do? Well, he stood there and he looked at it from a distance because it's very high and out of the way. So this was his scientific investigation. Don't even get near the thing. Just look at it and go, yup, looks fake to me. Let's go write up a study, guys. I got this. So the alleged sauropod petroglyph is a mere mud stain. The dinosaurs are illusions produced by, what is this? I don't know. Okay, look at the head.
Pareidolia, Greek words, man. Whatever it is. I don't even speak English. Pareidolia, mister.
Pareidolia, there you go. So look at this image. They said this is it. The head is just a squiggly round circle, and the body connects randomly, and then there's just mud stains underneath it. Well, let's see if that's true, because somebody decided, I'm going to go there, and I'm literally going to put up a ladder, and I'm going to take a crayon and just roll over it and see if it's pecked into the wall or if it's a stain against the stone. Uh-oh. It was a clear dinosaur with eyes and a mouth when you zoom in. Not the mud stain nonsense that they were talking about. And they even drew an actual figure. The dinosaur-like xenomorphic petroglyph on the bridge is comparable to that of any other clearly Ashkenazi petroglyph. So they drew the same things other places, and it's similar to their type of art. So it's meaning they did this. They made that. And what they did is they took like an antler, they would hold it against a stone and they would hit it with a rock, and then until that would peck into that and leave holes. So kind of like when you're a kid and you want to like put something under a piece of paper and like a quarter, and then take a pencil and go over it, it'll show the mark of the quarter on the piece of paper. Same concept that was done here. But here's the kicker. There's two dinosaurs. Uh-oh, I guess he couldn't see that when he was looking up in the bright sunlight. So there were two dinosaurs. They both have legs on them, and they're fighting one another, it seems like. The tail's going through the neck of the other one. And that thing, that squiggly line right here that they said, oh, that's just a squiggle. It's not even a head. You can actually see, if you look, the squiggle's above the head. Here's the head. Here's the squiggly line. He didn't even get that right. So you talk about a laughable rescue device. I mean, it's stupid. Like anybody with brains and common sense would be like that. Were you paid to do this? I would think so. Here's another brontosaurus that somebody drew. Obviously, it's kind of faded over time, probably hundreds or 1,000 years of time. But you can still see clearly a brontosaurus. I don't know what these ancient people are looking at. If it's not a brontosaurus, I would love to know. Is that a bird? Is that a cat? Can they just not draw? Are they like high on ayahuasca or what? Like, what's happening here? Why are they drawing dinosaurs? Are they just getting lucky or what? Beyond me. People say, well, so what? Dinosaurs went extinct. Maybe some could have lived through, or that's fine. They're just gone now. Maybe man's older than we think they are. Maybe man goes back hundreds of thousands or millions of years. That's the kicker. Well, that's another problem, because guess what? Somebody has seen a living theropod that it goes before dinosaurs existed. Now get this. This is where it gets crazy. Somebody saw a creature that looked like this walking around. These existed before dinosaurs, according to the secular concept. And here it is. The cave art discovery depicts an animal that went extinct 280 million years ago, baffling scientists. What was this? These were a type of theropods. These are like non-reptilian. They're kind of like a mix between reptiles and mammals. It's a very thing that they said, these were predecessors. So they came before all of these other clades did. So the interesting thing, when they went there, they found art depicting one, and they found evidence that they lived in the area. They found a fossil foot. They found like part of the body. And then something interesting came out just recently, by the way, after they found this art, is that the skin, by the way, they found one that was mummified, was actually reddish and brown in color. Wait, Is that what they drew on the wall? It is. So they actually got the color correct too. Interesting. One of the few dinosaurs that we actually know the color of their skin, and it was the exact pigment and color that they drew on the wall. And they did a whole study determining what the pattern looked like and the color in the study itself. And this is what the AI rendered as the final verdict of what that creature looked like. And here's what they drew on their wall. 280 million years ago, everyone, before dinosaurs lived, humans saw it walking around and drew it on their wall. And where did they find these creatures, by the way, that was mummified? Right out here. Interesting, huh? This is America, by the way. This is California. This is like Florida down here. So back when there was a flood, they found it under an area where that was flooded with water. That's right. They sure did. So when the continent of the United States was submerged underwater, this is a secular picture I found online. This creature was found right there. And it was found only around mosasaurs. Those are aquatic dinosaurs. Why would a land creature be found with aquatic life and be mummified right alongside of it? Could it be a flood? I don't know. Peculiar how much is preserved. Look, you can see the heart tissue. You could see what it ate. What could preserve something so well? I guess we'll never know, huh? So let's go down. What do we have? When we look in a fossil record, shouldn't we find hundreds of millions of years of dinosaurs actually living there? Or would we actually find and expect to find very few? Because it was only about a couple thousand years before there was Noah's flood anyway. Not a lot would be preserved, right? So the dinosaur fossil gap paradox, the idea that fossil records of dinosaurs is incomplete, and the missing fossils may hold clues to the evolution of dinosaurs. So guess what? They said there were as many as 2.5 billion Tyrannosaurus rexes that once walked on Earth. Where are they? We just don't know. The only amount we found is 0.00001%. Interesting. Out of those 0.00001%, how many are complete? This is all that we've ever found. We've only found a couple that are complete dinosaurs, meaning when the flood crushed them, it disarticulated, threw their bones everywhere. It messed them up. But the ones that we found that are complete, guess what? They're found in a drowning position, trying to fight to breathe air. It's called the dinosaur death pose. Look it up. The dinosaur death pose shows that they're gasping for air in the last moments of their lives. And that is how they died. That was their last moments. And when they were running for their lives, they were running over rock that was not hard yet. And you could see their footprints going through solid stone today as it became solid. So you can see them running for their lives up through the rock layers that later became hardened and are now pressing through millions of years of geologic time. It's only getting worse. So this fossil gap paradox, we can solve this because it's easy. If dinosaurs, if there were literally 2.5 billion Tyrannosaurus rex, they would probably leave evidence that they existed, wouldn't they? But no, they did not. It's solved because only a couple thousand years has passed. And how do we know? Because we find soft tissue inside of them. And guess what? Usually, most of the original bone is still present in the dinosaur fossil. They admit this. By the way, secular again. No young Earth creation stuff here. So what do we have? We have the new evidence museum based on physical evidence for evolution. It's completely empty, as you can see. Because there is no good evidence for evolution. It's complete nonsense. This stuff is going to be crazy. Instead of finding the slow and smooth progressive changes that Lyell and Darwin had expected, they saw in the fossil record rapid bursts of change with new species seemingly out of nowhere and then remaining unchanged for millions of years. Here's another one. Did you know that dinosaurs that have plates on their back, that they're found, 70% of them are found upside down? What you ever think about that? Why would that be the case? You put a dinosaur with a metal plate basically on its back in water. What's going to happen? Bloop. He's going to flip over. He's not meant to be swimming in water. He's going to flip over and he's going to drown. He's going to sink to the bottom and he's going to be buried. That's how we find most of them. 70% are found upside down. You know what the secular community said about this? They said, well, no, maybe when they died, they just laid there in the sun and their bellies got real fat from bloat. And then they exploded and it rolled them over. And that's how they died. And then they slowly got buried slowly over millions of years. Bones laying outside are not going to turn into fossils, people. If your dog dies, those bones aren't going to become fossilized. So you can't just say it flipped over from bloat and then died and turned into a fossil. That's nonsense. Scavengers are going to eat it. The bones are going to go everywhere. It's going to be a mess. You're not going to just find it sitting upside down. It's just absolute bizarro nonsense, craziness. So here's what the flood looked like on a time lapse. The land slowly got immersed over the first 3 to 4 months of the flood. It wasn't just one wave that came and took everything out. It was a slow progression over time. And that made creatures run to higher ground. And then after everything was flooded, the water started to recede for the last 4 months. That's how animals got off the ark and had food to eat. That's how the dove brought the olive branch back. It had months of time to grow. So people were like, well, what the animals eat? Each other when they got off the ark? It's like, no, the water didn't just instantly flood the earth in one day and then instantly recede in one day. There was a process where the earth was only flooded for about 4 months. That was the duration of the world underwater. The rest of the time it was being flooded or receding from the flood. So, we get into some crazy one now. This is called the phosphate beds of South Carolina. This is interesting because in it, they found the remains of the hog, the horse, and other modern animals of recent date, together with human bones mingled in with bones of the mastodon and extinct gigantic lizards. Huh? Gigantic lizards, do you say? Do you mean to say dinosaurs? I think you do. The book he actually published, Sir Francis Holmes, is that he put himself on the cover of his book with a dinosaur, a hadrosaur dinosaur to be exact, because he found a hadrosaur dinosaur next to human remains. And this is the phosphate level layer right here. Below it are just sands. There's not many layers here, people. There's only a few. And inside of his book, we can see this is a post-Pliocene age. So around 11,000 years to a maximum of about 34,000 years, okay? And what did they find within that? Well, there were about 200 feet long creatures that were aquatic. That's pretty weird, right? That's pretty big. Not much we have today with that. So this graveyard existed. Oh, sorry, here we go. Here's another publication that came from that exact same thing. How shall we escape? Ranging from the common periwinkle to the mammoth and mastodon and megatherium, and the mystery of man's longevity clears as we find his bones among the number. Interesting. So another book was written on his discoveries. It's called Man, Dinosaur, and Mammals Together. And in the book, you can see that this was all around an 11,700 year time period that all of these things are mixed together. And if you look in here, this is classified of land mammals. We can see elephants, deer, horses, monkeys, camels, elk, the porpoise, dolphins. So aquatic life mixed with land life and ancient life. And then reptilian, we have the hadrosaur, Ichthyosaurus, crocodiles, alligators, turtles. Look, humans, jawbones, oysters. Look at that. Everything kind of mixed together. But here's what we're getting at. Here's the most important thing. We're found deep aquatic sea life with modern day life, land life all together. And radiometric dating that was done on this area dated it around 26 million years ago. But wait a second. What's going on? How do we have modern life and ancient life all mixed together? Because none of those, that age doesn't match anything. It doesn't match the dinosaurs, and it doesn't match recent times either. So what's going on? It tells you that the fossil record, the fossils can be moved around, and they're testing the rocks next to the fossils to tell you how the fossils are. Isn't that foolish? Imagine if I had an aquarium behind me with fish, and I took rocks from outside in the garden, I threw them in there, and then I had a bunch of fish, and I put them in my aquarium, and I just let them die. I forget about them. I don't care. And then the scientists want to come over and say, when were those fish in the tank? I'm like, you figure it out. So they take all the rocks out and go test them. Think about it. So what do we see? We see fossils dating old ages, but the same fossils are in young age deposits. Old age fossils, young age deposits. Huge problem. I say that we can answer this much better, and we can destroy the fossil record next, because remember, Darwin predicted slow Darwinian gradualism in the fossil record. Here's exactly how he portrayed it. As a state of orderly process working at a speed so slow that no person could hope to observe it in their lifetime. Infinitely numerous transitional forms, the finest of gradual steps. What did we find? Well, we find fossil tracks before we ever find the creature that left them in the fossil record. That's the theme. Why would we find that if evolution was true? You wouldn't. You would find them at the same time, because there's obviously the creature that lives them isn't living hundreds of thousands or millions of years later. You're finding the tracks before you find the creature because they were running for their lives. In almost every scenario, you find the same thing with fossilized trackways of trilobites, where they move through different geological eras of time before they're submerged and they finally die in the mud. They were running for their lives. Unless you want to tell me that they lived for hundreds of millions of years. I don't know. Trilobites aren't alive, but I'm going to assume that's not true because that seems illogical. We also have the temporal paradox, where we find the parent of the supposed species that they evolved from living before them. That's what we find with the supposed Archaeopteryx, the one that dinosaurs evolved into. It actually is found. Their feathers are found before dinosaurs even existed. Whoops. Can't really invoke that one anymore. Then we have zombie taxons. These are a fossil that is from a younger geological period than its organisms that actually the actual extinction date. And what it actually looks like is this. Remember, this is what it was supposed to look like with no problems, because millions of years have passed before species had it. We have disharmonious associations. That's when an ice age type of a species, like let's say a woolly mammoth, is found in the same rock layer right next to a lion that lives in the desert of the African plains. They don't live together. Why are they next to each other? What sense does that make? It makes a sense if you're getting a global catastrophic event pushing them together into a mass graveyard, which is what we see all the time. Then we see times when evolution moves in massive leaps. We find ghost lineages. That's when, like, you look for a big cat. Like, what did a big cat evolve from? They don't know. They just show up out of nowhere in the fossil record with no predecessor. They're called ghost lineages. They exist everywhere in the fossil record. They're everywhere. They just appear out of nowhere. Where does sloth come from? Where did giant sloth come from? I don't know. But I don't know. Where did bat come from? I don't know. They're just everywhere. Ghost lineages are a huge problem. And then stasis is another problem. You shouldn't find stasis of creatures as the majority rule. How about a Lazarus taxon? That's come from the biblical term for Lazarus, who was resurrected. That's when they find a species deep in the fossil record, like 300 million years ago, and then it just goes missing for like 200 million years and then appears again, completely unchanged. What happened? It lived secretly for 200 million years. Where was it hiding? I want to know that spot, Darwin predicted that there's no way we could find soft-bodied tissues of organisms in the fossil record. But if a global flood happened, we would be able to find them easily because it was preserving everything because of a massive catastrophic event. Darwin ruled that out because of Charles Lyell not allowing him to look at a catastrophic history. He could only look at uniformitarianism. And since we don't see global floods today, obviously one could have never happened in the past. And Darwin fell right in that trick and got duped for it. So the fossil record has turned out to be a complete embarrassment for Darwinists. And they admit this. So here, paleontologists flock to these scientific versions of the world in a constant state of flux and admixture. But instead of finding the slow, smooth, and progressive changes Lyell and Darwin had expected, they saw in the fossil record bursts of change, new species appearing seemingly out of nowhere and then remaining unchanged for millions of years. And here's the source for those comments. And then what do we find? Sudden death. We find fish in the middle of eating something. And what Donnie said earlier about an aquatic species giving birth while being killed, while being submerged and fossilized. Now, the critic, what do they say? They don't use their brains, so they just get emotional and be like, that local floods happen, right, you idiot? Oh, that could have easily caused these things. Just get a local flood and it will kill it. This is a deep sea creature. What local flood is causing this deep aquatic creature to get buried by a flood. Come on, use your brain, people. I know that's hard for that community, but I have faith in them one day. Then we have global flood traditions all around the world. And people say, well, that's just a chance. You know, they had local floods that wiped out their village and they just kept the tradition. Oh, well, guess what? The Tower of Babel legend also exists. So what, did they also build a tower and then get confused when they were talking to one another as well? Come on, people. The rescue devices are really, really, really bad. And it's just so bad. So here's an evolutionist, Philip Cura, and he states that the fossilization is a process that can take anything from a few hours to millions of years. The amount of time it takes for a bone to become completely pre-mineralized is highly variable. If the groundwater is heavily laden with minerals in solution, the process can happen rapidly. So they admit that if there was a flood, like a global one, it could create the fossils that we see. It doesn't take millions of years. And we have evidence of that literally from being tested. We have stratigraphic columns where we bored down in all of the different continents of North America, over in Asia and South America. And when they bored down, they noticed that there was interesting layers. Big rocks followed by smaller rocks, followed by even smaller rocks. Why? Because every time there was inundation of water coming in from a tsunami, burying each layer, it was creating that layer that you see with bigger rocks, kind of like if you have a sandbox, right, and you shake it up, and it's going to create those layers. Well, then you add more sediments because more water's coming in, and you're going to get that unique pattern. And by doing that pattern, we find something really interesting. We find that as the continents were being submerged in water, we find those rocks distributed like that during that entire process. So here we go. Those are fossils that you're looking at. And those interesting things is that global fossil record that you see, we're going to be looking at, is really important because it's going to tell you the story without the dates. Because as soon as people can look at the bigger picture and erase the dates from their mind, they're going to see it for what it is. This is the Jurassic time period habitat for all of the fossils that lived during the Jurassic time period. Interesting, right? All right here. Then we go to the early Cretaceous. The fossils are more distributed. They're a little bit more everywhere. They're starting to show up around the coast of California. They're all the way up to here and going down into Mexico. And then what do we notice? That most of the ferocious dinosaurs are there. Humans are not there at all. And there's no trilobites either. So interesting, not all aquatic life is there. So what's happening is as the flood is progressing over this continent, it's ripping down the middle of it, and it's leaving the highlands and submerging the lowlands. Then we get to the middle Cretaceous. We start to know that now the fossils have started to move over the other rest of the continents. As you could tell, life was running away from it, and they were dying at now the peak areas, even here on the California coast. And then what we'll see is that when I overlaid the picture of this map right here, just so people could see it more clearly, this was the last amount of land left on Earth. And guess what? That's where we find most of the fossils now, because that was the dinosaurs' last stand. They ran to the highest ground and then they died. And then boom, what started happening? Well, now we have the continent, all the creatures submerged, all the layers on top of them. The continents are now under the water. And guess what? The water starts to now run off the continents. So guess what? The water is going to push back, going off the continents, back into the ocean itself. And it's going to push the fossils and bring it with it. That's exactly what we see. The fossils have now moved towards the coast, and they've compiled right there near the edges and right down in the Morrison Formation, which is now the lowlands, which over here is underneath the water area in that. And then so all the fossils have now pushed towards the ridges, and that's exactly what we see. And then we also see the sand. All the sand runoff is now also off the coast in Mexico between Florida and Texas. And that's 1,500 feet deep worth of sand. That's how much sand was being ripped off the continent right there. And this is a visual that I had AI make me as the water was rushing off back away from everything, bringing these sediments with it. Very fascinating. So what I like to say is that critics think that a desert-dwelling sheep herder 5,000 years ago just dreamed up the perfect dimensions of a gigantic seaworthy ship that would work and hold thousands of animals. I want you to think about that. Because guess what? They have done tests, on multiple tests. And here was one that they did where they took and they bombarded it with gigantic waves to see if they could tip it over. And it withstood massive amounts of waves, and it would not tip over. They also ran a published study that you can read about at the university, the Liberty University, and they wanted to know what is involved in the type of research that's going to be needed to do this. Here was the research, the PhD, and what they actually ran and their experiment. And they published the study right here for stability, comfort, and the strength of Noah's Ark. So if you really want to read a PhD published study on Noah's Ark, that's been done. And guess what? It worked perfect. And one of their conclusions was it could hold 70,000 adult animals and not sink. So
wait. So I want to hammer this point. The dimensions of the ark given in Genesis, no other account has those dimensions.
Right.
Has been scientifically proven to be the perfect dimension and size to contain 70,000 animals, and that it will not capsize. And this is found in a document written about 1,500 years before Jesus Christ.
Right. Exactly. From a guy who lived in the desert that was a sheep herder.
Thank you, Lord. That should make all of you move you to tears and fall on your knees, how supernatural your Bible is, how true your Bible is, how real your Bible is, and how real the God of the Bible is. But there's a message behind this. God destroyed the world in flood because of evil and sin and immorality. So though we're rejoicing that the scientific facts prove the story, it's also proving there's a holy God who hates sin and will punish evildoers and destroy them in his wrath if we don't turn and cry out for mercy. And he's a God who loves us, who doesn't want us to perish. Keep in mind what the flood story is all about.
Right. I mean, look how much extra room there was on the ark, and the people didn't want to get in. They had tons of room. And here's a book.
One more comment, I'll let you continue. Take your time. You almost maybe want to cry for the dinosaurs that you're saying they're running for their life and gasping for air, dude. It's like I felt bad for them. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. All because of mankind, too. Not even their fault.
Right.
All because of us. And, a lot of critics just say, well, you only believe in a global flood because you're a young earth creationist and your Bible tells you to. Other people that don't believe in young earth creation don't believe in a global flood. Really? I point you to Earth in Upheaval, a book written by an atheist who literally documented and went around the world documenting evidence of a global flood. He documented burials with land life and aquatic life mixed together. He went and he documented whales on mountains, different places around the world. And why would a whale be on a mountain? I mean, most whales just evolved supposedly 55 million years ago based on the slow rate of plate tectonics that move just a few centimeters or something. It's going to take a lot longer than 55 million years to push a whale to the top of a mountain. So he documented whales because he was like, what happened? How is this possible? So he went around the world documenting global flood evidence. And of course, they ridicule him. But there you go. There's your source. So if you're too triggered to look at creationist content, maybe you can look at one of your own sides version. Because guess what? Not everyone that believes in a global flood is a creationist. So that's debunked as well. And a lot of people said, well, there's something called the mud problem. Rocks don't just instantly solidify and become rocks after like a global flood process. They have to solidify it. And there's no evidence that rocks instantly got hard. How would they have made the Tower of Babel? The Bible actually tells us how that happened. They baked them. They made the stones and they baked them out of clay and they formed the stones. So they could have been soft. And do we have evidence of soft stone? Yes. In different parts of the world, we have a lot of evidence that stone was soft. And we can see that looking at different places in stone because it's solid today. So what? Did they waste decades of their life just pawing at a stone with their hand like retards? Or did they actually walk up to the stone when it was soft and put their hands in it to make handprints? I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me. How did they make some of these stones? Do you think they just carved this? Did they have extra free time when they were building this huge megalithic structure to be like, you know what? I really wish there was a corner right there, everyone. Start over or just, put a bend right here. No, it was soft. It's so obvious it was soft. I mean, how are dinosaurs stepping through solid rock? I mean, come on, use your brain. How are these mountains formed? I mean, does that look like it formed hard? No, it's soft. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. How are there rocks in the middle of these layers? Look at these. Look at these. These are called drop stones. They're rocks in the middle, gigantic rocks, some of them too, in the middle of layers that supposedly exist over millions of years. So what are they doing there? How come these stones are sitting in the middle of geologic layers? What's going on? Those were deposited there during the flood. And that's why they're in the middle and so out of place. These are called drop stones. You can find them around the world. They're in places they shouldn't be, even in Africa. So I don't know. I just see evidence everywhere when I look. So when I see people say there's no evidence, I'm perplexed. And think about this. We've got a meteor that comes down and it strikes the Yucatan Peninsula so hard, it eradicates the dinosaurs to the point where there's none of them supposedly found over the KT boundary, right? So it rips them all to death. And then somehow the dinosaur that went extinct lived long enough to turn into the chicken that we have today. I want you to think about that one. So it killed all the dinosaurs, but it didn't kill them. Keep that in mind, everyone. That's how they get you. But don't worry. They said the dinosaur probably had feathers. Remember T-Rex? Now they're throwing feathers on him. Well, guess what? They actually found his skin. Uh-oh. No feathers anywhere. Sorry, everyone. You lost T-Rex to a chicken yet again. So the indication, T-Rex had scales everywhere they've actually looked in these studies. They haven't found any evidence that they had any remnants of feathers on them. They weren't a transitional species. I think what really confuses people the most is that the fact that they see genetic similarity and think to themselves genetic relation. So if they go, oh, well, there's genetic similarity between a chicken and a T-Rex, that makes them related. No, it does not. It does not mean related in any way, shape, or form. How do we know? Because we made the prediction first that genetic similarity would be found based on a similar common purpose designer. And if you want to see the entire quote, there it is. He predicted DNA similarity before we actually found it. And the critics, even at the time, said no biologist had even the foggiest notion that such similarities could even exist between genes of such different animals. It was inescapable and stunning. Now we know when we look at genetics, DNA sequences, we see similarities and we know what they are. That's because of creationists, people. We made that prediction. And now we know that genetic boundaries exist. And that is the most crazy thing ever. But I wanted to get into something crazy. Donnie, how much time do I got? I don't even know. I'm just talking.
Brother, you have a time limit. Don't worry about it. Finish your presentation, and then Donnie comes and finishes up. I'm not in a rush. For me, we have a very good crowd. My numbers are very high for this. That means people are hungry. So don't feel rushed. Finish your presentation, brother. Don't worry about it.
Take your time, Matt. Take your time.
All right. I think this is important. A lot of people say, well, how did Noah feed the animals? And what about when the animals got off the ark? Are they all humans and all animals had to breed through incest? And there's no way they can increase from such a small amount of things. It's called a founder effect. And in the 1940s, the zoologists predicted that the population below just a few dozen are doomed. There's no way they can repopulate and survive. Inbreeding would kill them. So getting off the ark and you only have maybe 2 of every unclean animal, they're dead. There's no way they can survive. Inbreeding will just annihilate them right away. What do we actually see? The exact opposite of that. So here's a wild sheep that were dropped off on an island that populated and grew from a single pair that had no problem with genetic diversity, and they survived just fine. We have stick insects, which are called lobsters for some reason, and 3 of them repopulated yet again, no problem. We have birds being populated down by a single pair of individuals, yet again, repopulated, no problem whatsoever. We have rabbits. Only 24 of them were dropped off in Australia. And guess what? There's 200 million of them today. Not a problem. Deer. 5 white-tailed deer, only one of them was a male, was dropped off in Finland. Today, you can hunt them all you want because you can't kill them fast enough. They had no problem yet again. Here were some buffalo dropped off, 14 of them, on Catalina Islands for a movie shoot. They just left them. They said, they're dead anyway. Who cares? Leave them. Well, guess what? They populated to 150 individuals and survived no problem. Yet again, 7 lionfish completely took over the entire invasive species. Now they've literally ruined the ecosystem, all from 7 lionfish. how about the 5 adult Italian wall lizards that were found on that island that they love to talk about? Well, guess what? They repopulated that entire island from just 5 of them. Again, no problem. Wolves. Here's another one where they did a study from a single individual from a pair of wolves that repopulated the land. No problem. We also have obviously evidence of humans. This is the best and most recent example of an island where the people are still living there today from the original pair that was dropped off, or that I would say ran to that island to go and live. They still carry the last name, actually. Here's another one. Unexpected heterozygosity of an island mouflon sheep population founded by a single pair of individuals. See that word unexpected? That's because they didn't expect it to even survive. They drop off these animals, and their belief in evolution doesn't allow them to even think for a minute that, like, oh, maybe it can be all right. Maybe a population can increase and not drive itself into extinction. You see, we don't have a population. We don't have a population problem as creationists because we have a single generation bottleneck followed by a single generation increase where everything is now growing in population size and diversifying and spreading around the world. There's no problem with that happening. The problem is when things become very isolated and they can't populate very high and they stay in one area. That's why God always tells mankind, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Because if we stay in one spot, he's going to make us diversify. Because if we don't, we die. Inbreeding will kill us. So evolution has the problem because they have multiple population bottlenecks that last for thousands of years with inbreeding constantly going on. Humans can't survive that. Matter of fact, let me go up. I'll show you a real quick study that was actually run on how long could Neanderthal or modern man or Homo erectus or Heidelbergensis actually survive if they lived in the small population sizes that they think they lived in. And by the way, it doesn't look good. So this is the name of the study, Inbreeding. And the young earth creationists noticed so much that they said, wow, this study found that the findings show that small Neanderthal populations would cause them to become extinct for just 10,000 years. How could they have survived for 400,000 years? So I actually ran the chart myself and I said, let's do the numbers and break them down quick. Because they believe Neanderthals lived in a population of just 10 to 15 and no more than 20. Keep that in mind. So now, based on the study of inbreeding that was done, published by the secular peer-reviewed journals, a population of size of just 10 to 15 people would be extinct in about 500 years or less. If they were 25 to 50 people, 1,000 years. So how did Neanderthal live 400,000 years? They couldn't have. Nothing on Earth could have allowed them to do that except for maybe some kryptonite or something. I don't know. I'm looking for that. If they had an elixir of that could have been it, huh? Maybe they had some little elixir going on that they had. I never thought of they had that. And then somebody said earlier they had a specific question and it popped up and I couldn't help myself but mark it down. And we're going to answer that real quick because it was about Atlantis. Where would Atlantis fall in this? So Atlantis was predicted to probably be somewhere out here, right off the coast of Spain in that area. And then some people say now it might have even been within that area, within Spain, like right off the coast. And it was that ring upon ring scenario that was going on. But what happened is all of this area, especially down here in Africa, as you know now, that was decimated by a flood. And that flood is still remnants there today. And it was an ice age melt-off. So it was about 1,000 years after the flood that the ice age ended and that snow melted and rushed over the continent of Africa and wiped out Atlantis. So it was a post-flood environment. And if I can find Africa, I wasn't ready for that. I will show you the continent of Africa being flooded visually because I've made slides of that. Here we go. Maybe this. Nope. It's okay, everyone. Bear with me. I've got them somewhere. I have thousands of images to go through.
Yeah, take your time as you're looking for it. One thing I learned from this, I can't trust not only social media anymore, the government anymore, politicians anymore. I cannot trust the public educational system anymore. This is it. It's over. I mean, the corruption is so high. Social media lies to us, brainwashes us. Government politicians lied to us. And now we see that it began with the public school systems lying, brainwashing, destroying our children to lose faith in the God of the Bible. I'm done with public education system. I don't even now. You know what you got me to do? You got me to the point I'm skeptical if we even landed on the moon. That's the point you're getting me to now. I don't know if I can trust anything they say.
Yeah, you're going down the rabbit hole too much. We're just going to look it up. Wow. A lot of actual floods happening recently, huh? I wanted to find old maps. Okay, here's a good one. Here's one from space. Looks really good. You can see the area that the ocean water moved over it and brought sand, and the sand destroys topsoil. And then as wind blows, it's called desertification. The sand blows over the green area and expands the desert. So that's why the Sahara is about 4,000 years old. And you can just see how the water moved over these areas, and that's why they're desert today. It was because of the Ice Age melt-off that caused that environment. So, oh man, I don't know if I can go back. That's way too many photos. Okay, I lost that. We're moving on. Take your
time. If you want to find it, don't worry about it, but you're not in a rush. We have, like I said, it's some of the best crowds, and I'm not into numbers, but for this session, I got a large crowd. They're eating it up. But guys, don't forget, go to their YouTube channel. They're just covering a 10th, not exaggerating, a 10th of the material, thousands of hours of lectures, seminars, debates. And I'll show you their channels again. I've linked to it in the description box, but proceed, brother. Don't worry. No
okay,
rush.
We're going to go over two things then, and then I'll go away. We have genetic boundaries. So these genetic boundaries are fascinating because they didn't expect that. Of course they didn't, right? They said this is called the Sweeping Gene Survey reveals new facets of evolution. In analyzing the barcodes of over 100,000 species, the researchers found a telltale sign showing that almost all the animals emerged at the same time as humans. Could it be? Out of a bottleneck, humans came out at the same time as animals? That's right. All the genetic diversity is very low and about the same, meaning we all came out of a global bottleneck at the same time. And he admits this is confusing. Although it's easy to imagine that a human passed through a bottleneck maybe 170,000 years ago, it's hard to believe that exactly the same thing happened in all species. Did herrings really pass through an equally recent population bottleneck, and anchovies too? You know, does that sound familiar to anybody? Perhaps a global flood? I mean, it sounds pretty obvious to me. They admit nothing out of the ordinary happened 200 to 100,000 years ago in Africa. When they went looking for this mythical bottleneck 200,000 years ago in their own fossil record, they found no trace of anything. Maybe because their time frame is wrong? Young Earth creationists noticed that this genetic boundary study was really good. Every major organization wrote a paper on it. So they got so afraid, they wrote a disclaimer and added it to their scientific journal paper. Look at this, added December 4th. This study is grounded in and strongly supports Darwinian evolution, including the understanding that all life has evolved from a common biological origin over several billion years ago. This work follows mainstream views of human evolution. We do not propose there was a single Adam or Eve. We do not propose any cataclysmic event. Oh, you don't? Let's see if that's true. So here is their newspaper article that came out after their discovery. It says, this has debunked much about what we know about the evolution of species. This is the author of the study himself, Thaler, admitting before all of this came out about young Earth creation, what he literally admitted. Another unexpected find of the study is that species have clear genetic boundaries and not much in between. If individuals are stars and species are galaxies, said Thaler, they are compact clusters in the vastness of empty space. This absence of in-between species is something that perplexed Darwin. Why didn't we find these species progressing? Why did we find stasis? What's going on here? He said, this conclusion is very surprising, and I fought against it as hard as I could. So when you see their laughable response of like, oh, this strongly supports Darwinian evolution, and we don't promote catastrophic events, then what are you talking about? Why are you saying that you're losing sleep over this? Come on, people. What they found was exactly what the Bible describes: independent lines of ancestry with nothing in between. And I've run these studies myself. And humans share the same consensus sequence going back to all of the different so-called different species. Neanderthal, Denisovan, Heidelbergensis, they all share the same consensus sequence. And you can do the same thing with wolves and dogs. All dogs today descended from a single wolf species. That's in the books. We know that now. So that's fascinating, really good information for people to know, because it makes the most logical sense. But you might be thinking, well, what about like the bottleneck? Like, can't the evolutionary model explain like life from a bottleneck? Yes, but not very good. And it can't explain it very good because it loses genetic diversity. I want you to imagine Paris Hilton on a plane with a Chihuahua and all her friends that have these stupid little dogs, right? All these crazy dogs everywhere. And this is it. That's all they've got. Now she looks out the window. What does she see? A catastrophic bottleneck going on outside. All the dogs in the world are dead. There's nothing that survived except for these Chihuahuas. Now, what's going to survive out of that bottleneck when these dogs start breeding again? You think we're ever going to see the wolf? You think we're ever going to see the Great Dane? You ever think we're going to? No, we're losing diversity. All that can ever come from them again is that little bit of genetic diversity that's left over in these worthless dogs. Okay? That's it. That's it. You're losing. Bottlenecks destroy evolution. They lower genetic diversity. It's going downhill. So that's what's happening in a bottleneck. You can't keep getting bottleneck after bottleneck after bottleneck and keep getting diversity to explode and rise up out of nowhere and new species coming out of these new ones. Sure, you're going to get you can get some going out, but you've lost the overall theme over time. Now do that over millions of years. Come on, right? So how about this? How did Noah feed all of these animals? How did he clean up all of their waste? He must have been a really, really busy person, right? Actually, no, he wasn't very busy, because what we found when we genetically tested all of these different animals, they contain something that is a gene that allows them to go into a type of a hibernation. And this type of hibernation, they thought only could exist in the colder regions, in the north and the south. Maybe it had to happen for a particular reason. Then they realized, wait, hibernation can happen anywhere on Earth. The animals have a gene that they can turn on when they need to survive, usually lack of food, or if it starts to get a little cold, kind of like a bear. A bear doesn't go, well, I guess it's time to hibernate. No, its genetics have told it, like, you need to drop into this right now because you're going to be without calories. It's time to save yourself. So they drop into what's called topar. And what it is, it's a type of hibernation where they just fall asleep for a little while. They lower their metabolic rate so they don't need to eat. And they just sleep every single day away. And all of the animals that they tested have it. So what it is they moderate their own body temperature, and they can drop into it almost at will. And they just cuddle up into a ball and they sleep their time away without needing any calories. And get this, without even needing to go to the bathroom. So there would have been no ways to clean up anyway. And even if there was, you're going to be surprised, because guess what? All we have to do is go to the northern regions, and it's called deep litter. All it is wood chips ground up. And what does this do? This is basically adding a layer of carbon from wood shavings. It allows the whole creatures, the animals living in these things, to go to the bathroom underneath the house, because you see people that live there have a problem. All the animals leave the woods and they start to live under the houses, and they live together. Like the carnivores that kill the prey. Yeah, they all live together under the house together, ironically enough, because they're trying to survive. They now become allies. So they'll move under a house because it's warm. And so the owners were like, man, this smells horrible. Our whole house stinks and I can't go under. There's a freaking bear under my house. So what are we going to do? So they just push a bunch of wood chips under there and wood carvings and peat moss or whatever. And now the animals go to the bathroom. There's no cleanup. They don't need to do anything. The animals can defecate and it absorbs all of the methane, all the smell. There's no problem. It stays nice and warm. There's nothing to tend to. There's nothing to clean up. And it works like a charm. And farmers use this to this day. It's called deep litter. And they hang out and they get along together like nothing. So Noah, even though he probably separated them out in cages, he didn't even need to, because they would have gotten along knowing, I'm going to die. I'm going to die real quick. So time to get along. Animals aren't stupid. So again, how about the reptiles? That's right. They fall into hibernation as well. It's called brumation. So not only did all the mammals be able to fall into a hibernation state, reptiles did the exact same thing. Isn't that crazy? So unbelievable, huh?
So these are all scientific facts that scientists know, because these are facts. When you see in their dire situation, they hibernate. And yet they'll still bring up objections against how could it be possible for these animals to survive in the ark for that period of time, which wasn't like for dozens of years. And yet they know all these facts about the animals, and they still raise this as an objection, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're just stubborn, you know. I think that if they've done any study on it, they can realize, oh, it's actually not a very bad problem. I mean, it's like everything can be answered pretty well. But what they do is they use bad examples to prove their point. They go, well, I worked at a zoo before, and tending to all those animals is really, really hard. And Noah would have never been able to do it. It's like, is that really what you want to compare this
and
to?
Noah had 100 years to figure it out. Isn't it incredible, these built-in mechanisms that we see, hibernation, migration, and those built-in mechanisms could have been manifested during the flood, these animals on the ark. Is that right, Matt?
Exactly. We have so many mechanisms that the creatures could have been using themselves, and that's without any help from Noah, right? That's just them doing their own thing and Noah neglecting them. He could have actually been helping. He could have been feeding them. There's no problem with that either. You know, I mean, there would have been a setup for all of these things. They had over 120 years to do that. Obviously, they had plenty of time. So, I mean, I don't see a problem with it either way.
Let alone that's taking out the God factor, because they're naturalistic, materialist atheists. But we're saying God is involved. So if we add then the God factor, that God is real, that God then, who is almighty, can then cause these animals to survive because he preserves life. He doesn't need food to preserve them. He can preserve them. So if I add that element, that God exists, and the evidence shows the Bible can be trusted because the God of the Bible is real, then what's the objection?
Right.
Amen.
I think the biggest hiccup that people get are the dates that the rocks themselves give. So I'll just go over one thing real quick. Yes. And again, this is a peer-reviewed published study. What they did is they went to the ocean sea floor and they wanted to determine how old is it, because the sea floor is being created from the lava that pours out of the mid-Atlantic ridge and flows away from it. And when they test the lava, they noted that young lava dated 22 million years old. Interesting, but why and how? They said caution is urged in applying these dates to deep sea ocean basalts in study of seafloor spreading. So they admit that you really can't trust it. Now, here's the thing. How old was that? Well, the lava that was probably less than just 200 years old. So what happens is when a volcano is going off and it's lava spewing out of it, lava now runs down deep into the ocean. And as it's going down, the temperature is getting colder and the pressure is getting stronger. And it's, for some reason, it's messing with the argon that's inside of the new rock layer that's forming the ocean floor. And what it's doing is it's pushing that argon out. And now we're getting much older ages than it should be. So if you get 200-year-old lava right at near the base of the ocean sea floor, and it's tested 22 million years old, let's do that in reverse. Let's go test rocks that are 500 million years old on the top of the the highest mountain in the world, the Himalayas. Because remember, when tectonic plates are moving and the seafloor hits a continent, most of it gets subducted. It goes down. Some of it, though, goes on the top and it gets abducted, meaning that's why we find aquatic life on the top of Mount Everest, because it's coming from the ocean seafloor and going up. So what happens when we date the top of Mount Everest? We go, wow, look, it's 500 million years old. Well, if 200-year-old lava dates 22 million, then 500 million year old lava is only 4,545 years ago. That's exactly the biblical timeline of Noah's flood, isn't it? So the oldest seafloor on Earth at the top of the Himalayan mountains could maximally be at the age of the flood. I find that very ironic. But here's the problem. What they do is they do what's known as calibration. See, they'll take that and they'll calibrate it with ice cores, and then they'll calibrate it with the deltas that come out, and then they'll test it with the seafloor beds, and they'll say, look at that, a magnetic reversal. So if everything is calibrated off of something that's wrong, how can you trust it? You can't. Matter of fact, when they first started testing the accuracy of carbon dating, look, when they sent samples of known ages out secretly to 38 different laboratories, 23 of them got it wrong. That means there was a 60% failure rate. That means all of these failed. Only a few labs even got it correct. 18%. So but that's an old study, right? Some will go, oh, well, that study you talked about is really, really old. Clearly, it's much better. Well, guess what? I found one more recent to appease everybody. It was 2019. And guess what? It's just as bad. It was only 50 to 60% accurate. So even after over 30 years of time, they sent out known things to test to different laboratories, and they fail at a 50 to 60% accuracy. So in dating reliability, that's less than a coin toss. You might as well just coin toss it. That's garbage. It's considered completely useless or weak when it comes to it. But here's the real question. If there was a global flood, what do they say? If any carbon-14 may have existed before then, this would be given an older age than the flood, would give false appearances. So that's the whole question. If there was a flood, could we reliably test anything before the flood? So if there was something like a dinosaur, could we test it? It would say no. It would date much older because volcanoes erupt dead carbon and plants absorb that dead carbon. So when they absorb it and you test the plant now, you're going to get a wrong age because volcanoes destroy it. That's why you can't carbon date something like the Shroud of Turin very accurately, because it's been through 3 separate fires. How can you test it? If it went through 1 fire, it wouldn't accurately date, let alone 3. So we know that these dates are crazy. But here's the interesting thing. Donnie showed it earlier. These are coal samples that are found and been carbon dated. They all give a relatively similar age. Look at that. The average is 49,000 years. So, but if all of these are just random coal samples dating back at different times and they were all contaminated, contamination would mean some would be contaminated with a little, some would be contaminated with a lot. But this doesn't show contamination, does it? What it's showing is a consistent theme of everything having the similar proportions of carbon in them, indicative of contamination. And isn't it ironic how fast a critic will say, oh, it's contaminated, the second it agrees with us? You ever notice how fast they run to these dating methods to prove we're wrong? And then when you show them these things, they go, well, it could be wrong because of this and this and this. It's like, wait, you're using this as your best evidence and you're willing to throw it under the bus the second there's a problem. So you're not very confident in your very own methods, are you? That's what I like to point out to them, because they'll quickly throw it under the bus the second they have to and they can. So the radiometric dating is not a helpful thing to them at all. And it really just causes confusion. And remember, they admit that there's a general perception that there's a competition to get the oldest date, and there's kudos in it, meaning your name's going to be in a newspaper. You're going to get an article written. You're going to, new finding shows man lived 1 million years ago. Matter of fact, that just happened. Hold on. 1 million euros. That's right. Million-year-old human skull rewrites evolution. Boom. Found in Asia, not even in Africa, by the way. So guess what? These dates really throw everybody off. They make a conundrum for everybody's side, right? If we're saying it's old, young, and it dates old, it's confusing. If they're saying it's old, and then they keep finding other things like this, it's a problem for every side. So I just say, don't trust the dates at all. They admit that they're wrong the vast majority of time. If I said, hey, we're going to go to the casino later, we're going to put it all on red, you'd be like, what? No. That's like not even 50% accurate. That's stupid. Exactly. It is stupid. And anyone that would trust a dating method that's 50% accurate is stupid as well. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. So now the genetic evidence is where we go. The genetic evidence is what destroys evolution. That's why they try to run to these other random things as fast as they can, because they love the fossil record. It's wiggle worm. You can tell any story you want in the fossil record. But when you get into genetics, they just lose. So when did this bottleneck happen? Donnie can mention that, go over that later, because he's going to get into genetics, and we go straight to mutation rates, because mutation rates are the literal clock that's inside of our bodies that's been ticking away, and we can travel backwards in time and go right back to Eve. And we can do the same thing with animals. And the same result happens every single time we go back to a recent ancestor, to an animal on the ark. None of them even remotely get close to even a 200,000 year time frame of the evolutionary rate. So if they can't even remotely get to their time frame, but yet it lands exactly on ours, I mean, come on, you can't get better than that. So genetics is where it's at. And that's why Donnie and I love genetics so much.
Two things, I guess, Donnie, you're going to present that next now?
Yes, but I did want to bring to the forefront Matt. He put out a well-researched video, I think a couple of years ago, Matt, on the Shroud of Turin, and showing that it's legit.
Exactly.
Making a case for it.
So guys, if you want to find their YouTube channel right here, Young Earth Creation, boom, right here. They're just a tenth of the material they have. Thousands of hours of lectures, seminars, debates, and they have websites with articles. It's all here. That's his YouTube channel. And then here is Standing for Truth. Now, he specializes in this area, but he does more than that. He has debates on other topics right here. Go there. So, Lord willing, just two things. You guys, whatever you want, you got time. Don't worry about it, brother. All I got to do is cardio later, and I got time. But one thing,
I like our playlist. If you want to find anything on my channel, I recommend the playlist. Scrolling through is just going to mindlessly bore you to death. Just go to my playlist.
Okay,
Same with Donnie, probably. Donnie actually has a website where you could type in what you want to look for. That's probably much easier, honestly.
And that will be found on there also, because they have links here. If you look here, form and links, they'll give you the links. But the playlist. Well, one thing, brother, I need you to face these and repent. How dare you put a picture of beautiful female dogs to tempt all of us? Why would you have pictures of beautiful female dogs to tempt us? What's wrong with you, brother?
Oh, that was AI. Those weren't real. That was all AI. Those weren't real people or dogs. Don't worry.
I'm talking about the
They look pretty real to us, Matt.
Nope. AI.
I was talking about the dogs, man. I don't know what you were talking about. I was
yeah, my bad.
Matt snuck that in without my approval.
All right, I'll follow your lead now. What's next, guys? Let me put up whatever you want me to put up.
Yeah, I got some really good stuff that'll complement this, but I wanted to say, because this is important, Matt, going back to what you said closer to the beginning of your presentation, I found it really interesting that you utilize AI or ChatGPT to analyze a lot of these drawings that we find on caves and that we find depicted in ancient civilizations, and also the descriptions that are offered on these great dragons, these great serpents, from people like Alexander the Great, Marco Polo, Herodotus, so on and so forth. And you gave that to AI to answer objectively. And what did AI conclude? That, yeah, these sound like dinosaurs. One of them, I think, was an Allosaurus.
Right.
It clearly was. And so you'll have skeptics say, well, no, that's not a dinosaur because maybe this inaccuracy, or you dismantle the point that where the critics would say, well, maybe they found dinosaur fossils and then depicted the fossils, but you don't just find the entirety of a dinosaur skeleton just sitting out of the ground where you can then depict it as accurately as they do. They might find a bone or two. They might find just the head, which means they would draw everything else inaccurately. But the fact that these depictions are so true to what we understand dinosaurs look like is fascinating evidence that man and dinosaur coexisted, because if they didn't, how are they depicting them and describing them so accurately?
Yeah, matter of fact, here's a perfect example of that. The Romans themselves, because they excavated so much building their city, they actually came across
giant mastodon or woolly mammoth bones. And when they did, what did they think they were? They reconstructed them as giant cyclops.
Cyclops, yeah.
Because they didn't find their tusks. So they stood them up and they said, wow, that was a 30-foot human. That was a gigantic cyclops, because it looks like they have one eye, right? So they didn't even know what they were doing. And they were way more sophisticated than some Native American band of people out there living out there that drew Brontosaurus. I mean, come on, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, here we go. I remember before I was a young Earth creationist and I saw all of those depictions, the artwork, the descriptions of creatures that are obviously dinosaurs. It just blew my mind. I couldn't believe that this information was hidden from me for so many years, Sam.
You did make a comment that it was because the Lord Jesus Christ used Ken Hovind mightily in those years to get you to see that the facts of science does confirm the scriptures. You made a comment earlier. I was going to bring it up, but I didn't want to put it on because I didn't want to hide this his images. So God did use Ken Hovind early in your life, huh?
Absolutely. I first came to the world of Christianity watching generalized debates, Sam. Debates with Christian apologists like John Lennox, who did a great job at just demolishing atheism, showing why the general Christian picture is true. William Lane Craig as well. Yeah. I believe they struggled once we got into the details about origins and evolution and so on and so forth. And then when I discovered Kent, when he did all those university debates, dozens and dozens of debates in the universities, one of them was a 3-on-1. He did another one with Michael Shermer. And I was looking at this completely objectively because I was wondering, okay, is the earth old? Is the earth young? Debates that I was familiar with were with people like William Lane Craig, who's a theistic evolutionist, John Lennox, old earth creationist. And so I was familiar with their arguments. I liked them. But then when I watched Kent demolish university professor after university professor, he demolished 3 at the same time. He was a great influence in my shift towards young earth creation.
Oh my God. And even Craig, I heard recently, says Genesis does teach a global flood, but it's simply wrong.
Right.
So Craig, William Lane Craig, why say the man's dangerous? Like, you guys can stone me for it. You can hate me for it. He's done some great things destroying atheism. He's done some great things showing that the resurrection of Christ is an historical fact. All the evidence points to Christ being raised. But when it comes to his view of the Trinity, of Christ being God in the flesh, about Genesis, my goodness, how much heresy can someone espouse before you say enough is enough? We cannot recognize him. Now, that's between him and God. I don't determine salvation. I may end up in hell. I may be deceived. May Jesus have mercy on all of us. But I'm talking about from this side of glory, how much heresy can someone espouse before you say, man, this guy's more dangerous than good? He's admitting to people Genesis teaches a global flood, but it's not true, because we know scientifically it didn't happen. So he's saying that the Bible's full of errors.
Right.
So
it's dangerous. I don't get it, because he's not convinced. And we've done a couple of responses to him on this. And in our last seminar we did with you, Sam, we went over quotes, one specific Frank Zindler during his debate with William Lane Craig was pointing out how nonsensical the theistic evolution position is. And that's why the young earth creation, special creation position is the most consistent for William Lane Craig to basically say, well, the Bible clearly teaches a worldwide flood. Isn't that wild? But we know science has told us or informed us that a global flood is impossible, even though he's never addressed the scientific data that we've been presenting. So he just asserts it, which means the Bible must be wrong, and therefore the flood account must be symbolic or allegorical in some way. I mean, that's dangerous. I agree with you, Sam.
Oh, it's very dangerous. In fact, someone called him out. He's a young earth creationist. I had the clip. I played it. I forgot his name. He said
Terry
that he was
Mortensen.
there at his wedding. What was his name?
Terry Mortensen.
Because he said he was there actually at his wedding and they're friends. And he said, look, I'm going to challenge you. Let's have a debate on whether science confirms the global flood. And this is Craig's friend who was there when he got married. He's calling him out. Kudos to him. Glory to Jesus Christ. Though he loves Craig, he loves Jesus more. Kudos to him.
Amen.
So there
Jesus first. Dr. Terry Mortensen does great work. He debated Hugh Ross recently, actually, did a fantastic job. I've got one of his books behind me. It's called Searching for Adam. And so Terry Mortensen from AIG, he's really good at the biblical arguments and the biblical exegesis. So William Lane Craig should accept the challenge. I don't know what he's waiting for. He likes to attack young earth creationists, but I haven't actually seen him debate an informed young earth creationist yet.
I don't think he will. In fact, in the debate between Ken Hovind and Hugh Ross, he called them huge loss. I mean, I've seen him call him huge loss.
Yeah, right. You bring up Hugh Ross. Well, when you have Kent on, because we've already confirmed that he would love to come on, you can mention Hugh Ross to him, and he will say, "Oh, huge loss." I mean, Hugh Ross.
Exactly. I actually watched this debate he had on John Ankerberg, because John Ankerberg is a huge old Earth creationist apologist, and I wanted Hugh Ross to win because I didn't know any better. Because Norm Geisler was a big influence on me. Just to give you a little background. Norm Geisler was an old earther, so he was a huge influence in the beginning when I started studying apologetics. But as I studied the evidence, no, I can't be old earth. I can't. It's just impossible. I can't do it. So, brethren, let me follow your lead. I took too much of your time.
No, not at all. I love the back and forth, Sam. You're a blessing. I can't wait for our open mics together coming up on the Trinity and refuting Islam.
We're in trouble. Did you want me to share anything? You have a screen you want me to share? This one?
Yes. Yeah. It should be so I got a few different things that I'll go over to complement what Matt was saying and to expand. So right here's a program I recommend everybody check out. This is with Dr. Andrew Snelling. He was a lead scientist in the RAPE project that I discussed. He's a geologist. He worked many years for Answers in Genesis. He was, I think he was the director of research actually a few years as well. He's probably the best geologist, if not one of the best that we have in the world of young earth creation. Well published, well credentialed. He's a genius. And so he has run a ton of experiments. He himself has done, made testable predictions that have been confirmed. And anyways, so in this talk, he covers much of his work and much of the research in the conventional literature. Matt touched on this, where when it comes to dating methods, for example, Mount St. Helens. So we have newly formed rocks from known volcanic eruptions in a lot of our lifetimes. Okay. And so these rocks form and they're tested and they should come up at relatively new, right? They were just formed. So they date these rocks using potassium to argon. Potassium would be your parent element or isotope, and then it decays. So your unstable isotopes decay into a stable daughter isotope. So potassium to argon, that's what K to AR means. Anyways, so they test these rocks, newly formed, and they come back at, notice this in Andrew Snelling's slide, close to 1 million years for newly formed rocks. You can look right in the conventional literature, all these known lava flows, and you can see the incorrect dates. 32 million years, 8 million years. These rocks were just formed. And so the point is, why would we trust dates derived from rocks of unknown age in the distant past? Evolutionists claim, well, these rocks formed millions to billions of years ago. We didn't see them form, but the dates we get are hundreds of millions of years. It's like, well, wait a minute. We can't even get dates right for rocks of known age that we've seen form in real time. We get millions of years oftentimes for newly formed rocks, which means there's inheritance from the mantle, most likely, where these daughter isotopes are making their way in, which falsifies these assumptions behind dating methods. So why would we trust dates you're giving us for rocks of unknown age? Doesn't make any sense. And then the C14 data, of course, suggests that the Earth is young because we wouldn't find C14 in the first place if the Earth really were old. So to further complement what Matt was saying, Matt, such good information. That's why we pay Matt the big bucks. He does a great job. And so notice this. These are flume tank experiments. We did a seminar a couple of years ago, conference with creation geologist John Mackay, the creation guy. He's in Australia, and he's actually run these experiments himself with flume tanks. So they're flume tank experiments. And these have also been run by numerous secular geology labs. And they repeatedly show that sedimentary layers form rapidly under flowing water. You can see in this tank here, these layers are forming in real time. Well-defined sedimentary, these fine layers here, graded bedding, cross bedding, all appear in minutes, not millions of years. And so what these experiments demonstrate is that layering is actually a hydraulic process through moving flowing water and not a time-dependent process. Okay. And so if you apply this to the year-long flood, well, this demonstrates that large sedimentary rocks can form rapidly, where we can find these fine layers of stratification occurring in real time. And we've demonstrated that, as you can see here, with these real-time experiments. Really, really fascinating stuff. And so, okay, let's continue on here. Dinosaur soft tissue. So clearly, the evidence for man and dinosaur coexisting, as Matt went over, is extremely powerful. If man described dinosaur, the Bible describes dinosaur with a behemoth, tail like a cedar. Old earthers will try and say, oh, that might be a hippo or an elephant. I mean, you ever seen their tail? It's like a wet noodle. Certainly not comparable to a cedar, but the descriptions simply don't fit behemoth or even Leviathan. They'll try and say or assert is an alligator, or they'll say it's a mythical creature, even though God says to Job, behold, now behemoth. Would he be saying, behold, a mythical, not real creature? No, clearly this has to be something real that Job can see and touch. Okay. And so all of these historical records that Matt went over, where man is describing dinosaur, the word dinosaur didn't come about until, between the 16 and 1800s. So they used different words before to describe these kinds of creatures. A common word was dragon. Okay. So dinosaur soft tissue. This is incredible. You can go to ICR, and why I have ICR listed is because a researcher from ICR, Dr. Brian Thomas, he's actually published in the secular literature. So again, this isn't all just creationist resources. We have creation scientists that are making discoveries and publishing in the conventional literature. And we have over 140 examples now. We have dozens of peer-reviewed secular science that are reporting original biomaterials, soft tissue, proteins, collagen, cells, blood vessel-like structures. It's incredible. And fossils, like in T-Rex, claim to be millions of years old. How in the world, based on what we know about biochemistry, brothers, could these original biomaterials still be there for us to discover, analyze, and study? If these fossils were millions of years old, they should have decayed away. They've done experiments to see, even in the best case scenarios, how long can collagen last? And even in your best case scenarios, which means these wouldn't even apply to the real world in the past, but let's just give it to the evolutionists. The best you have is 500,000 years. And people might say, oh, well, that's a lot longer than 6,000 years. No, you're missing the point. That's the best case scenario. Yet we find collagen preserved in dinosaur fossils claim to be 500,000 years. No, 65 million years old. And so these finds challenge the expectation that such organic substances must decay long before geological ages. Fossils reported include dinosaurs, turtles, marine worms, insects, and more, all showing features of unmineralized organic material. If the flood is true, then we'd expect these creatures to be rapidly buried, rapidly fossilized, because fossilization is a delicate process. It requires very particular, very specific circumstances. And so, of course, if these creatures are rapidly fossilized due to rapid burial, then we'd expect these soft tissues to be preserved. And since it's only been for 4,500 years roughly, then of course it makes sense that we find them. If true, the presence of hardly altered soft tissue argues for a much shorter time frame than conventional deep time. The endurance of original biomaterials strongly suggests exceptional preservation conditions or a younger age, which, as we can see from experimental data, is the more parsimonious explanation. We have no problem as young Earth Christians. As I said earlier, we can sit back, relax, discuss this data, sip on a coffee, because it fits beautifully well with the young Earth model. These data form part of a larger irreducible preservation question. Here's the question I want you guys to ask old earthers and theistic evolutionists. Save this. How could delicate biochemicals remain intact for hundreds of millions of years under normal geologic conditions? You'll see that their answer is typically composed of rescue device after rescue device or a lot of dodging. These findings encourage fresh investigation into fossilization mechanisms and challenge standard assumptions about decay rates. Notice how, regardless of what we're looking at, we've been going for a few hours now and we've touched on biology, genetics, astronomy. We've touched on chemistry. We've looked at dating methods. We've looked at geology. No matter what field we look at in science, it all comes back to one conclusion, that the earth is young. God created the heaven and the earth, Genesis 1:1, and we are not related to mosquitoes, worms, and banana plants. The evolutionists, there's videos out on YouTube from popular evolutionists. They'll say, oh, limestone precludes young earth creation. Creationists can't explain all the limestone we find on the planet. They're completely wrong. We're going to pulverize that assertion here. Limestone doesn't need time. It needs concentration. And so what we see with the global flood and the fountains of the great deep breaking open, we have incredible evidence, as we've gone over so far, for catastrophic plate tectonics, worldwide sedimentary rock layers, these cold slabs of rock that we find deep within the earth. And they haven't melted yet. They should have, if the earth really is old. And so you'd have these chemicals, you'd have the perfect recipe during the flood to rapidly form limestone. We can even see that today. Okay. And so the flood produced exactly the chemistry required: warm water, supersaturation, CO2 rich volcanic fluids, hydrothermal circulation. Secular geologists have observed chemical limestone forming in years, not millions. If modern limestone forms fast, flood generated limestone forms even faster. Deep time not required. Remember this: not time, but a process. Not time, but a process. The worldwide Genesis flood allows for all the necessary processes to rapidly form things that evolutionists or deep time proponents say the young earth model can't account for, like limestone, like these sedimentary rock layers, like caves. Okay, so do caves require deep time? No. We observe stalactites, stalagmites, and cave formations forming rapidly under the right conditions. And so it's the rate of mineral-rich water flow, not time, that determines how fast they grow. Global flood, again, 2 Peter 3, Sam, Matt, and I exegeted 2 Peter 3 extensively during our last seminar. And we went over the fact that the scoffers in the last days will deny three things: the special creation, the global flood, right? The world that then was being overflowed with water that perished, and the coming judgment by fire. The third event, coming judgment by fire, is not coming to a local city near you. This is going to be a worldwide, universal, local or judgment by fire, which means the best understanding of the second event, the world that then was being overflowed with water that perished, would also be worldwide and universal. Okay. And so critics or scoffers deny the flood, which means they're denying the event in Earth's history that has the necessary processes to actually rapidly form things that they say we can't explain. It's incredible. Helium and zircon crystals. Oh, I love this one. This one's irrefutable, just like the C14. So going back to the RATE team, the RATE project, they made another prediction when they looked at these zircon crystals. Okay, so when uranium decays into lead, as a byproduct, as you can see here in the visual, is helium. Helium is a very slippery atom. It moves through the rocks quickly and escapes into the atmosphere. Okay. And creation scientists made a prediction when they tested these zircon crystals that are supposedly billions of years old. And they said, well, we have two positions: old Earth, young Earth. Depending on how much helium we find, because think about it, if helium moves quickly into the atmosphere, leaves the rocks quickly. Okay. If these zircon crystals really are billions of years old, we can make a pretty simple prediction. If these zircons are billions of years old, we should find very little helium, because over billions of years, uranium decaying into lead, uranium being your parent isotope, lead being your daughter. As that process goes, the decay chain, you have helium atoms as a byproduct being produced. Okay, well then the helium should have mostly escaped into the atmosphere. We shouldn't really find any helium, or perhaps we just find a little bit. If we find an abundance of helium, well, then those zircons can't be billions of years old. Well, it turns out they did the study. They looked at the zircon, sent it to a top of the line professional lab. And from my understanding, the laboratory, those performing the experiments, when they found out afterwards that this was in favor of young Earth creation, those young Earth creation scientists that were carrying this out, they weren't too happy. Well, sorry, this is what the data suggests, that there's too much helium in these rocks for millions to billions of years. As you can see, got the zircon crystals, the helium is escaping. And so the rate scientists, they concluded based on these studies that if you actually look at the rate of helium diffusion and how much helium was found in these zircon crystals, okay, if you look at the leakage rate, this is empirical scientific data, a real experiment, these are real numbers, then the Earth, based on this data, can only be 6,000 to 10,000 years. That's incredible, because there's far too much helium in these zircon crystals. We shouldn't find as much as we do. Distant starlight. We want this seminar to be comprehensive. We've all heard that, well, how can the universe be 6,000 years old if we see stars and galaxies billions of light years away? Doesn't it take billions of years for the light to reach us, to reach our eyes? Firstly, distant starlight, that's a distance, not necessarily a time. But we've had, and I got his book behind me, Dr. Jason Lisle, again, PhD astrophysicist. He wrote an excellent book, The Physics of Einstein, where he debunked this challenge using the physics of Einstein, known science. Okay. And so his model is the ASC model. And it shows that the so-called distant starlight problem is really about how we measure time, not how light travels. The one-way speed of light can't be measured. Only the round trip can. Therefore, if light travels instantaneously toward Earth, okay? So what this means in layman's terms is that based on what we know about the physics of Einstein, okay, and how we measure time and how we look at light, light from even the most distant galaxies can be reaching our eyes instantaneously. Dr. Jason Lisle did an excellent job in his debate recently with Hugh Ross, where Hugh Ross had no good counter to this. And so notice this: if light travels instantly toward Earth, as the Bible may imply, the anisotropic synchrony convention, we're seeing deep space in real time. Believe it or not, it's fully consistent with Einstein's physics and removes the starlight problem altogether. So notice this concept: two-way versus one-way speed of light. We can only measure the round trip speed. The one-way speed depends on our chosen synchronization convention. Jason Lisle's model. Light travels instantly towards Earth, but slower away. So instantly towards Earth, which is the way it has to be for Adam and Eve to see the stars at creation. Okay, a valid choice under relativity. Result, we see distant starlight as it happens, no distant light time problem. Scientific status. Is this just ad hoc? Is this really based on science? Yes. Fully consistent with Einstein. Can't be falsified because it's a convention, not a measurable variable. The distant starlight problem is about the measurement of the two-way speed of light, but not the one-way speed. And so as we're looking at the most distant galaxies and stars, we're seeing it in real time. And this goes back to the James Webb Space Telescope data, where even your most distant galaxies are fully mature, fully functional, just like our galaxy that we live in, the Milky Way galaxy, showing that cosmological evolution or the Big Bang theory is false, because those galaxies in the most distant parts of the universe should be lesser evolved. But no, they look like they were specially created, predicted by a young Earth creationist. Okay, let's get into the hominin fossils. This is a very interesting one. At the beginning of the show, we had a few people talking about Lucy. So these so-called extinct transitional forms, a little bit of human, a little bit of ape. Well, firstly, if you look at chimps today, okay, according to evolutionists, there's your cousin. I mean, just go to the zoo, go look at, and it's interesting because they'll say, well, a good line of evidence for evolution is that we look so similar to a chimp. We share more in genetics with a chimp than we do with a banana. It's like, take your 5-year-old to the zoo, tell your 5-year-old to run around the zoo, and don't tell them anything about creation evolution. Tell them to pick out the one animal that we look most similar to. You think they're going to come back and point to a fish or an alligator or a bird or a banana plant? Oh, they're going to point to some kind of ape or monkey. So naturally, we are going to share more than in genetics with the chimpanzee than we do with a fish or a banana plant. That's good design. Sedans share more with SUVs and vans than they do with boats and skateboards. Those are what's called nested hierarchies by design. And so when we look to chimpanzees and compare them with humans, there's incredible differences in genetics. There's incredible differences in anatomy and morphology. You can look at the skull. You can look at the femurs. You can look at the pelvis. You can also obviously look at the evidence that we have for spirituality and creativity and being able to speak and being a lot more sophisticated than a chimpanzee. Even in similar sequences between humans and chimps, there's incredible differences in how those genes are expressed or regulated. Gene expression is that process by which a gene is turned on or turned off to produce an RNA or a protein. And then gene regulation is the process that's regulating that. And so a good analogy, a good genetics lesson is you can think of a remote. You turn on your TV, okay? And then you have a remote that turns up the volume. So that would be up regulation. And then you could also turn it down. So that's gene regulation, turning up the expression levels or turning it down. Or you can see a stoplight. You got your red light, yellow light, green light. If it's a green light, the gene's on. If it's a red light, the gene's off. That's gene expression. If the light is yellow, well, it's just expressed a little bit. Okay. And so that might help you to understand the genetics aspects of this. But the point is, even in similar sequences between humans and chimps, especially in the brain, there's massive differences in how those genes are regulated and expressed that evolutionists can't account for. In this picture, we have the famous Lucy fossil to the left. You can see that it's quite fragmented. We also have the skull in the middle. Does that look like your ancestor? It looks like an ape to me. And then you got the pelvis. The pelvis between, so if you look at the pelvis of humans, chimps, and the Australopithecines, so Lucy in technical terms is Australopithecus afarensis or AL288-1. That is our supposed, missing link, as some have pronounced it. They called it Lucy because apparently when they discovered her remains, the song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was playing. Anyways, we found many more of these creatures, the Australopithecines, and we have some similarities with them in their pelvis and their skeletal system. But I want everybody to remember this. It's the differences that make all the difference. We can account for similarities through common design. The evolutionary community, even though it's a challenge in a debate, you can just give it to them in order to focus on the discriminatory evidence. They're going to explain similarities due to homology, due to common descent. Similar genes or similar structures were inherited from past common ancestors. They call it descent with modification because then over time, those similar traits or structures, they alter a bit. They're modified, okay? So they want to focus on the similarities. The differences make all the difference. This is what we press our opponents on in debates, because the differences are what answer this question of ancestry. Are we related to apes or are we not? Yes, we're going to find all kinds of similarities in the pelvis, in the skeletal system, in the skull. Okay, but we want to look at the differences, which can be what's called discontinuities, where if the evolutionist has no good explanation for the transitional series in these systems, genetic systems, or anatomies, these features from the fossil record, then that shows special creation. Okay. And although there are similarities, let's go over some of the discontinuities. A couple of them I think are really going to blow your minds. So, Lucy, here's some key points. When we look to the pelvis, there are some similarities with humans, and we don't need to fear bipedality. A lot of creatures, it is an exception, but you do have some animals that actually walk upright. Some theropod dinosaurs do, birds, the gibbon. If you ever look at a gibbon, they spend a lot of time in the trees and they'll hang and they spend a lot of time being upright. But when they're on their ground and they're walking around, they look like a little hairy human. Okay. So walking upright in an inefficient manner, like we see some of the apes do, like gibbons, we shouldn't look to that as some kind of definitive trait on what it means to be made in the image of God. But anyways, some extinct ape-like creatures like the Australopithecines, they had a form of bipedalism based on the way their pelvis is shaped, but there's features in their pelvis and other aspects of their anatomy, like cranial, that would be the cranium, the skull, the face. Postcranial material would be below your skull. And so in your cranium and also in your postcranial material, there's some evidence that although they walked upright, it was in an inefficient manner. Bent hip, bent knee, nothing like the human form of walking upright. So there's something called the ischium. So the pelvis, there's different features, right? The sacrum, the pubis, the ilia, the ilium, the ischium. And so the ischium is actually long. Why this is important is because in Lucy and the Australopithecines, the ischium is longer. In apes today, guess what it is? Either short or long. Well, it's long. And they have an inefficient form of walking upright. Humans differ because the ischium in humans is short, which allows us to walk upright in an efficient manner where it's comfortable. So in your fossil record, these Australopithecines, which are claimed to be the transitional forms between apes and humans, actually have a long ischium. Humans in the fossil record, like Neanderthals that Matt touched on, very sophisticated people group, Erectus, Naledi, Hobbit man, they had short ischiums as well, consistent with them being human. And so when an evolutionist tries to say, oh, well, the Australopithecines, they walked upright just like humans. They were just this perfect transitional form. No, point out that there were some features that suggest, although a form of bipedalism, it was an inefficient form. Certainly not like humans, okay? They got that highly flared ilia. You can see that in their pelvis where it flares out to the sides. That's outside human range. Their brain sizes were very small, 400 to 450 cc's. Ours would easily be over 1,000. So that's the full ape range. Strongly prognathic face. What that means is when you look at a monkey or an ape, their snout, their face sticks out, right? Prognathic, where ours is more flat. We also have, a larger forehead as compared to the apes. Don't really have much of a forehead. It's kind of sloping. They've got the U-shaped dental arcade. That's interesting because humans have what's called a parabolic dental arcade. So it's more V-shaped. So here's another, again, differences make all the difference. They could point out all the similarities all day in these Australopithecines and say they're transitional. No, we want to focus on the differences. And when you take a holistic approach, guys, you can clearly tell that these creatures were not transitional or intermediate. They were their own type of ape, but they're extinct today. If they existed today, they would just be another category of ape like we see today. You've got Pan, which is chimpanzees and bonobos. You got gorillas, orangutans, and you got your lesser apes, okay? This is really where they struggle. The hyoid bone. We're going to get into this. You guys are going to love this. Use this every time you're debating an informed evolutionist. So the hyoid bone of Lucy was ape-like. It had a bulla for air sacs. Zero evidence of speech transition. Even the foramen magnum, that's called the big hole. That's where your spinal cord basically enters. And so in humans, it's in a position here that allows for efficient upright walking. You can see in the Australopithecine, it is So in humans, it sits far forward. You can see that there, supporting our fully upright bipedal stance. In Australopithecines, it is only slightly forward of chimpanzees, but nowhere near the human position. So this supports exactly what I'm saying, that although they had a form of bipedalism, it wasn't the type of upright walking that we see in humans. Okay. There's other features we can look at as well. Here's gibbons. Of course, they have a form of upright walking. Here's another Australopithecine. Just look at that skull. Does that look like your cousin? Does that look like your ancestor? This is what I mean. When you look at these Australopithecines, this specifically is called Littlefoot, Australopithecus prometheus. When you have not just isolated fragments, when you have enough of the picture, okay, the cranial material, the postcranial material, and I know a lot of this is technical, but it's important because informed evolutionists will pull these out. So I want to give you guys the ammo to demolish it. When you have enough of the material and you can see the discontinuities like the ischium, the skull, you can see the skull here is very ape-like, very prognathic. You've got the brow ridges are very thick, small brain case, barely a forehead. I mean, it's clearly an ape, okay? And yes, there's some similarities in the pelvis, where the pelvis of your Australopithecines are more similar to humans than to extant great apes like chimpanzees. Okay, but there's enough differences in there to show why they're a separate group altogether. And this is why it's important to have the skull, because when you have the skull like this, you can really tell what is and what isn't an ape. So Littlefoot is one of their favorites. This is one of the newer discoveries, but it turns out from my investigation that the pelvic pattern is very similar to Lucy. And so it confirms Lucy is representative, not transitional, as in this is kind of your overall makeup with variation of the Australopithecines. The ischium appears to be long and ape-like, and the hyoid bone. Okay, this is what we're going to get into. This is the challenge soon. But it's important to notice the skull. As we saw, prognathic, small brain. We don't really see a movement toward Homo. Okay. There's other Australopithecines as well. I have an entire series where I go over all the anatomical details. I'm actually working on it currently. I released one, and another one should be coming out soon. Okay. Australopithecus africanus, that's STS14. Same thing. Brain size still in ape range. You got the facial projection, clearly an ape. Pelvis shares some Australopith blueprint, like the flared ilia, long ischium. Okay, so we could go over all of those, but what I really want to show you is the major discontinuities, okay? And so when we answer the Australopithecines were a unique group of extinct ape-like primates. Their anatomy shows adaptation for climbing and limited upright walking, not a transition to humans. Every key trait, when we look at these creatures with a holistic approach, we can see that their cranial, postcranial, their vocal shows discontinuity and not descent. This is the fatal blow. A lot of this can be agnostic. We're looking at similarities. The evolutionist is making conclusions. We're making conclusions. Let's look at the differences. Okay, humans. One thing that makes us special is we can do what we're doing here. We can communicate. We can talk. We have sophisticated language. Well, a major feature that gives us the ability to speak is called the hyoid bone. Okay, so let's look at the hyoid bone in the Australopithecines and see if it's like humans or like apes to make our conclusion. Well, the only known hyoid bone from Australopithecus afarensis, remember that's Lucy, that's a Lucy species. Okay, and with each of these individuals, they have a designation, right? With Lucy, for example, it's AL288-1. Africanus, I think, is STS14. Prometheus, STW573, if I remember correctly. So if you're wondering, like, how come there's multiple names? It's Lucy and Australopithecus afarensis and then AL288-. It could be a little confusing, but that's because it's the designated name, okay? And so anyways, we've only discovered one hyoid bone associated with an Australopithecine, and this is incredible. It turns out that it is more chimp-like. It's more like an ape, not human-like. It has the bulla and air sac features of apes, not the slender, speech-adapted structure of humans. Point is, we have a type of hyoid that's designed and built for what we can do as humans. We have language, We're a sophisticated people group. We're creative. We have creative thoughts that we can communicate outwardly. Animals can't do this. Great apes can't do this. Well, it turns out your Australopithecines couldn't as well, because they have a hyoid that's very similar to apes today. That's not a transitional trait. That's a categorical distinction. And so the fossil record still lacks any hyoid showing a stepwise evolution toward human speech anatomy. Here's the questions that I ask these evolutionists that believe they're related to whales, banana plants, strawberries, and chimpanzees over and over again, and they dodge because there's no answer. They have no answer to this discontinuity. It's these discontinuities that actually separate great apes from humans, from Australopithecines. There's no relationship there. And the evolutionists can assert it all day long, but it doesn't make it true, because all they have are assertions, claims, and evolutionary philosophy. Here's the questions I want you guys to ask, even the most informed evolutionists. We have ape-like hyoid bones in Australopithecines and fully modern hyoids in humans and Neanderthals. That's interesting. We actually discovered the hyoid in Neanderthals. Neanderthals were incredibly robust, very powerful. They were adapted for the cold ecoglacial environments in the post-flood ice age. They had strong brow ridges. We see humans today. There's a Russian boxer, and he's massive, and he's got these big brow ridges, features that we see in Neanderthals. We actually have Neanderthal genes, which shows they're human, because that'd be very hard to explain why we have Neanderthal genes if you're going to say Neanderthals are not human. Like a lot of old earthers have reasons to believe they'll say Neanderthals are not human. Well, wait a minute. If we have their genes, what does that mean? That means we interbred with them, we mated with them, and we had offspring. We had babies to pass on those genes. Okay. There's incredible evidence for Neanderthals being a very intelligent people group. They buried their dead, which is evidence for spirituality. They navigated the open waters. They made musical instruments. They made tools, sophisticated tools. They hunted powerful animals. They sailed and fished in the open waters for tuna. I mean, these were 100% human. Anyways, we found their hyoid. And so the question is the hyoid in Neanderthals similar to humans, which allows for speech, or is it similar to apes and the Australopithecines? It's similar to humans, showing us that Neanderthals were capable of speech like us. So here's the question for the evolutionists. Where is the transitional form that shows the gradual development of a human-style hyoid capable of complex speech? What fossil evidence documents that intermediate stage? You know what you'll get? An honest evolutionist will say, well, we don't know. We don't have that answer yet. Maybe we'll get it in the future. But typically what you'll get, and you can see our latest debate for that, dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge, the 5 Ds of evolutionist dodgeball. Given that the hyoid bone is critical for speech and language, can you identify any fossils showing an intermediate morphology between the ape-like bola-shaped hyoid of Australopithecines and the modern human bar-shaped hyoid? Because so far the fossil record seems to jump from one to the other with no gradation. The hyoid bone is the anchor for human speech, and the fossil record gives us only 2 designs. Isn't that incredible? 2 major designs. This is one aspect of many that makes us unique, made in the image of God, expressing thoughts, expressing spirituality, having that connection to God, because we're body, soul, spirit. That spirit gives us that connection to God, unlike animals like apes. And so we have 2 designs. We see the Australopithecine design, including Lucy, and great apes, and then humans. Apes and Australopithecines have the same. Humans, including Neanderthals, have the same. So Australopithecus had the former. Homo and Neanderthals, that's Homo sapiens. And you might be wondering what that means, right? In taxonomy, you got kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So you go up the ladder: species, sapiens, genus, Homo. According to the evolutionists, our family is the great apes. Well, they might be an ape. We're not. Okay. We're mammals. They would say we're primates, so on and so forth. So when you hear Homo, that means human. Homo Neanderthal, Homo sapiens. There's no fossil showing an anatomical bridge between them, no proto-hyoid or transitional vocal tract. The data fits discrete design forms, not a continuous evolutionary pathway. So what does that mean? What do we conclude about these Australopithecines then, since we have these major morphological discontinuities. We don't have their genetics, so we can't really say there's genetic discontinuities, but we know there's genetic discontinuities between humans and chimps. So we can infer that if we did get the genetics of these extinct ape-like creatures, the Australopithecines, we'd also find discontinuities there. Here's a conclusion. This is what the data suggests, guys. Anatomically, Australopithecines weren't halfway. They weren't transitional between ape and human. They were a distinct kind altogether. Let's take a holistic approach. Let's look at everything in combination. The skull, postcranial material, the fingers, the shoulders. What do we see? Well, they're curved fingers. Remember, we're taking a holistic approach. Yes, pathology and degeneration can actually result in human curved fingers, like we see in some extinct humans like Homo naledi or Hobbit. They had curved fingers. But when you have everything in combination, you can tell that they're human with pathology and degeneration. But your Australopithecines, they got the curved fingers, the ape-like shoulders, the small brains. They've got the hyoid bone that's more similar to apes. They got the long ischium. Their hyoid bone proves they vocalize like apes, not humans. Every key system, guys, notice this: locomotion, their form of movement, reproduction, dentition, and speech, shows descent? No, it shows discontinuity, not descent. There are baraminologists, okay, young earth creation scientists, baramine, the concept of created kind in Genesis, right? Animals are created to bring forth after their kind. There are creation scientists that they do what's called baraminological analyses, kind of a mouthful. And they look at all the different traits in your Australopithecines and humans, and then using statistical baraminology, they can actually see that these Australopithecines cluster in their own group. They're too different to humans, and you have humans over here showing a gap, a separation where they're not related. These are incredible studies that are being done today. So, answering Australopithecines, key anatomical facts: brain size, very small, chimp range, 400 to 450 cc's, no overlap with human brains, cranial shape, strongly prognathic face, protruding face, thick mandible, U-shaped dental arcade, hyoid bone, ape-like bulla for air sacs. We saw that, not the bar-shaped human hyoid for speech. Their pelvis and gait. Yes, their pelvises were more similar in many ways to human pelvises and more dissimilar to chimp and great ape pelvises. So they had a form of bipedalism, but there's enough differences and discontinuities there to put them in their own separate kind. Laterally flared ilia, right? The hip flares out like this, and long ischium. And so their locomotion would have been more of kind of like a side swaying, bent knee, bent hip, inefficient locomotion. If they existed today, you wouldn't think to yourself, oh, wow, that looks so human. That must be our ancestor. You just think the same thing you see when you go to the zoo today and see all these variants of apes. So what you see here supports bent hip, bent knee walking, not modern human stride. Mixed arboreal and terrestrial, similar to gibbons, not humans, which actually makes sense because in the immediate post-flood world, you'd have these massive shifts in environment, where in the pre-flood world, it would have been 90% green. It would have been lush, a lot of trees. So you'd have a lot of these ape creatures hanging out in trees, hanging upright, standing on a tree in an upright manner. Well, what happens in the post-flood world when you take away those trees and you have these rapid, chaotic shifts in environment, where now they're existing in grassland environments or woodland type environments, and remove a lot of these trees? Well, it's more efficient to walk in a bit of an upright manner. And so now you have creatures that are essentially designed, because they're front loaded to do so by God, as arboreal and also upright walking creatures, because we understand that environment can dictate morphology. There's something incredible called epigenetics, where you can adapt rapidly based on environmental stimuli. And so it kind of makes sense that a lot of these Australopithecines had a mosaic nature to them. It fits what we know about the post-flood world. Again, when you take a holistic approach, look at this skull. Does that look like your human ancestor? It's clearly an ape. It's an extinct ape. No, it wasn't exactly like your extant apes today. It was different from humans, different from apes today. Extinct creatures. Notice this, right from their own literature, Reconstructing Human Origins, 3rd edition. This is what they admit. The cross-sectional area of Lucy's lower back vertebra, particularly the lumbar and sacral vertebra, are also extraordinarily small. Notice this, suggesting that they were not adapted for the bearing of heavy loads associated with fully upright postures. Everything I just said, my conclusions are supported from the conventional literature, conventional scientists that are saying, sure, they had a form of bipedalism, but they were not designed or built to sustain heavy loads like us. And so they would have had a more inefficient type of bipedalism. Even top paleoanthropologists like Conroy, Stern, and Ward agree Lucy wasn't a full-time walker. Her spine couldn't bear upright loads. Her arms and fingers were made for climbing. She was a part-time biped, anatomically distinct from both apes and humans. Guys, the creation model says we got variations of ape creatures today, variation of ape creatures in the past. There were massive shifts in environment after the flood, after the post-flood ice age. And those shifts in environment, based on what we know about how our environment dictates morphology, we'd have some minor shifts in the morphology of these creatures. And evolutionists can't account for these major discontinuities. And so here's the questions. Here's the last slide on this issue. Here's the questions we need to ask the evolutionary community. We need to put them on the defense. They want to put the creationists on the defense. No, show them the questions that actually act as discriminatory evidence, differentiating evidence. What's true? Separate ancestry or human evolution? Where is the transitional hyoid between the ape-like bulla and the human bar-shaped design? The humans is designed for speech. The ape hyoid isn't. Where is the fossil evidence showing the gradual emergence of human speech anatomy? And third, if Australopithecines were evolving towards humans, why does their pelvis still show climbing adaptations? That's an interesting question. And okay, I think we'll wrap it up there, gentlemen. Sorry to put you to sleep if I did on that last topic, but hominin fossils, it's a technical topic, but it's an important one because evolutionists like Aaron Ra really love to focus on these fossil creatures. And so I feel like it's my job to give a consistent and scientifically rigorous response to that argument. Brothers, over to you.
Just to let you guys know, it wasn't boring, brother. Just let me get out of here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot because I was on mute. Where the heck am I? Just to let you guys know, if you're going to engage this topic and you feel led by the Spirit to address this topic, you're going to learn and you're going to have to learn and master the scientific technical jargon, details. You're going to have to learn what these words mean. You're going to have to dissect them, master them, so that you can then meet them where they're at. You're going to have to be well-versed, well-studied, well-educated. So it's not boring because this is something you need to know because they're destroying our children, my daughters, your children. If they're going to go to public school and then end up in college, university, they're going to be taught evolution as a fact, and their faith in the Bible will be destroyed, which is why you have so much compromise from well-intentioned Christians who want to then dehistoricize Genesis, saying, well, you don't have to believe that Genesis is an actual account of origins. You can take it as God simply accommodating people, speaking to them on their level in order to take their creation myths and use them to teach a greater spiritual truth, which is compromise, which is satanic, because that's the lie of the serpent. Did God really say? And yet Christians with good intentions think they're doing God a favor by destroying your confidence in Genesis, because the whole foundation of your Bible, your New Testament, is Genesis. Genesis is the foundation for all the core doctrines of the Christian faith. I'm not exaggerating. For example, Genesis teaches you there's only two genders, male and female. Genesis teaches you that God's standard for healthy sexual intimacy is between a male and a female coming together to become one flesh, monogamy. Genesis also teaches you that humans are not compatible with animals. Go read Genesis 2. Genesis further teaches you that the God who created the universe is plural. Let us make man in our image, which is one of the texts we use to show how then God elaborates and unfolds that mystery of him speaking in the plural as pointing to the triune God. But if you dehistoricize Genesis chapters 1 to 11, you destroy the foundation of the Old Testament and the foundation of the New Testament, because Jesus is called the last Adam. If there is no first Adam, Jesus can't be no last Adam. And if there is no Adam that brought about death, then how can Jesus be the last Adam that undoes the death of the first Adam? This is why you got to learn these facts. So glory to God. Here's their website again. So if you go here again, oh, wrong link. Hold on. Where the heck am I? Sorry, brother. I don't even know where I'm at anymore. Hold on. Oh, I got too many pages open. Give me a second. Right here. Go here. I will be putting the links on Rumble later, but right here. This is a tenth of the information. They have slides. They have images. They have pictures. Thousands of hours of seminars, lectures, debates. It's right here. And his website. So if you open up here, you can go to the website. Right here, Standing for Truth Ministries. And you're going to find slides, and you're going to find all of these files there for your benefit. So here you go, articles. All right. So you go there, check it out, man. It's all there free. Now that's his website. You'll find the link on his YouTube. But don't forget our brother Matt. When you go right here. So this is just the beginning. And I want to start a new playlist, Refuting Evolution, with their videos, because they're the experts. I'm not. So I turn to them, look to them to demolish macroevolution and prove that the facts of science agree with the Bible, because the God of the Bible is the God of creation, and the facts of his creation will not contradict his word. So here is Matt's YouTube. And if you go there, links, and right here, voila. He's got clothes and everything, man. If you want to buy some of his clothes, go ahead and shoot.
If you want to rock this SF shirt, I got to send you one, Sam.
Yeah, I need to, man. But give me about a month when I lose 20 more pounds so I can feel large again. I'm trying to stay large. So here it is. Look, man, clothing, homie. Homie, don't play that. Say what? Selling you clothes, man. Merchandise.
And look at that top one, Evolutionist Tears. You see those? I got that mug behind me. See? And that's what we get. Sam, there's no better way to start your day, brother. I'm telling you, wake up, have a nice hot cup of Evolutionist Tears, because that's what we get when they're faced with this evidence.
See that? And here are the images. Some of you said you like visuals. Here it is, visuals. Go there. Visuals. I'll have them all here lined up for you. Anyway, you'll find them. But anyway, brethren, I won't take Q&A. It's been over 3 hours. It was epic. It was epic, using the words of my friend. Epic takedown, destruction of evolution. And they have a standing challenge. You heard it. Matt and he, as well as Kent Hovind, as well as Matt Powell, even Robert Surgenis would want a piece of the pie, because he's young earth creationist. Even as a Catholic, he's young earther. They will debate Michael Jones' inspired philosophy and William Lane Craig and Josh Samidas. Is that his name? Joshua Samidas?
Samidas, yeah.
Take them down on the facts of science, proving scripture, and that their theories are lies, and it's dangerous, and it's spiritual cancer. May the Lord Jesus destroy that cancer from the church. Now, does your brother want to say anything? Your final word, because he's been like missing in action. Did your wife make you tap out, choke you out, Holmes?
Yeah, she's like, Matt, that's it for the day, honey. No dinner for you unless you. He did a great job on the. What I like about this seminar, Sam, is the first one kind of set the foundation for a lot of what we discussed here, and we were still able to dismantle evolution in detail. Touched on dinosaurs, the flood, the age of the earth. We went into C14, right. Helium, dating methods, and the erroneous dates that they give. Comets, short period comets, why the critics' responses don't work. But to what you said, to the theistic evolutionists that believe in human evolution, they're going to look to those fossils, which we just dismantled. Lucy is not your ancestor. There's far too many discontinuities and discrepancies. But the genetic data, Sam, you nailed it, brother. What does the Bible teach? God creates two people, Adam and Eve. Adam, the first man, Jesus being the last Adam. If there's no first Adam, what's the necessity of the last Adam? Eve, the mother of all living. Paul obviously believed there is an Adam and Eve. Is it in 1 Timothy where Paul talks about how it was Eve that was deceived?
1 Timothy chapter 2, if you start reading from verse 9 to 15, he mentions it right there. 1 Timothy 2, 9 to 15. Also 2 Corinthians 11:3, he says, just like the serpent seduced Eve.
Right.
2 Corinthians 11, verse 3. He's warning, just like the serpent seduced Eve, I'm afraid that you will also be seduced from your pure devotion to Jesus Christ. It's in Scripture.
Wow.
2 Corinthians 11, verse 3. Let me bring those verses up before we wrap it up. But I forgot one thing you did say, brother, and go back, rewatch this. You guys have my permission, upload it. The stuff is yours, and obviously it's their material. They're going to upload it. But one thing he said that was interesting, I hope you mentioned it. He goes that you can trace the Y chromosome to a single Y chromosome about 4,500 years ago. You said that in the beginning.
That's right. Yeah.
On scientific grounds, right?
That's right. And that's why it matches up so beautifully. And this is the challenge to your theistic evolutionists who want to say, well, maybe they're mythical or allegorical, or they were part of a population of pre-human hominid ancestors. No, because the genetic data, like you just pointed out, Sam, and the Y chromosome, you and I have a Y chromosome. And if they were to test our Y chromosomes, Sam, they'd be nearly identical. Very 99.999% the same. Bring in males worldwide. They can trace every single male Y chromosome back to a single Y chromosomal ancestor. Guess how long ago? 4,500 years. You might be wondering, well, how do we know that? How is it so precise? Because we know how many DNA differences or how much genetic diversity separates men on the globe. We also know how fast the mutation rate is. And so all you got to do is calculate, do the math, work backwards, and you know where you land on? 4,500 years, which confirms what the Bible teaches about Noah at the flood. But Noah's Y chromosome was ultimately derived from what? Adam's 2,000 years before. Yeah.
So facts of science will point to a young Earth, which means old Earthers, you got problems, man. And theistic evolutionist, Michael Jones, time for you to retire, brother. And you know, I'm trying to be Christ-like to you, but I don't like you because you can get nasty and personal with people because you can't debate the arguments, which is why you tried to discredit Ken Hovind, and you went the route of trying to discredit me. But it doesn't work, guy. Man up and debate your lies. You need to be refuted. And you parrot our arguments, and you do a terrible job. He's now parroting the arguments he's gotten from folks like myself or David Wood, which were the pioneers. And he sucks at presenting them. May God convict him to repent. And he's even afraid to tell you his denomination because he doesn't want to lose support. See, people like this, may the Lord rebuke them to repent and be men of integrity because they're prostituting themselves for numbers. And it's what I love about these guys. They'll tell you what they're up straight up. It's what we believe. Baptist, King James only, King ain't on it, King ain't in it, right? And you know what? We love you guys, but we think you have a false gospel. We pray for you, but we'll still work with you in the areas that... See, I like that. I like that. I don't like people not telling me what they believe. But here's the verses for this brother right here. Because remember, Paul says, the serpent deceived Eve. 2 Corinthians 11:3. Well, according to people who don't believe Genesis 1-11 is straight up history, there was no Eve to be deceived by any serpent. 2 Corinthians 11:3. But I'm afraid that somehow as the serpent deceived Eve in his craftiness, so your minds might be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ Jesus. So that's number one. What he's referring to is this, 1 Timothy 2:9-15. Why does Paul set up certain order and a hierarchical structure in the church where the men are the head of their spouses and we have to have male leadership? Because of Adam and Eve and the fall. He bases it on that. Same way that women also adorn themselves in decent clothing with modesty and propriety, not with braided hair, gold, pearls, or expensive clothing, but with good works, which is appropriate for women professing godliness. Now, why is he setting the standard here? Let a woman learn in quietness with full submission. But I don't permit a woman to teach, nor to exercise authority of man, but to be in quietness. Why? For Adam was formed first, then Eve. Not according to William Lane Craig, right? Because according to his view, God already selected a pair among, does he believe in, not Homo sapiens, right? Hominids?
Yeah, he would believe what I presented on, like human evolution, Lucy, the hominins. So he believes Adam was actually specifically Homo heidelbergensis, who was human. I would agree with him on that. But he would put heidelbergensis somewhere between 300 and 500,000 years ago.
Yeah, but he believes that the couple were there already, right? It wasn't like one came out of the other.
Right. Yeah, like they basically came out of just a population of pre-human hominins. Yeah.
So he chose a pair from this population, right?
Yeah.
That's his theory. I'm not saying we believe, but that was because
right. That's his theory. That basically humans evolved up from ape-like creatures like the Australopithecines, and then eventually those Australopithecines evolved into humans, and then out of those early humans, God basically picked out two progenitors, high priest Adam.
But that's the problem. That means Paul doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
So I say William Lane Craig is dangerous. Listen to that, because it says Adam was formed first, then Eve. Paul is assuming the historicity of Genesis, that Adam was formed first. Not if you follow William Lane Craig and his mytho-history garbage that's from the pit of hell. Adam wasn't deceived, but the woman being deceived has fallen into disobedience. So notice, Paul is arguing, and he's using Adam and Eve as actual historical persons, and that Genesis gives you an actual historical account of how they fell, in order to then exhort Christians how to behave and what the structure and hierarchy in the church should look like. Men are the leaders. You can't have a woman leading a co-ed group. And then he says, just like the serpent deceived Eve, I'm afraid he's going to do it to you. But hey, if we take the view of some theistic evolutionists, that Genesis may not even be history at all, and there was no Adam and Eve, at least Craig wants to argue for an Adam and Eve, even though that's the butcher, the Genesis account of how they came into being. There was no Eve to be deceived by the serpent, but it's not only Paul you throw under the bus. Not only remember Matthew 23:34, where Jesus says that Abel was murdered and the blood of Abel will fall on that generation. Well, if there was no Adam and Eve, there was no Cain and Abel, but here, you also destroy Revelation. How do you destroy Revelation? Because it says the dragon that opposes the woman and her child, whom Michael then fights and then cast out of heaven, that's the ancient serpent, the devil. He's the serpent of Genesis here, Revelation 12:9. The great dragon was thrown down, the old serpent. What serpent? Serpent of Genesis 3.
Wow.
But according to this theory, if Genesis 1:11 is not history, but it's simply a myth that God is taking and fashioning and formulating to bring out greater spiritual truths, the devil wasn't the serpent in the garden that tempted Adam and Eve. So Paul is wrong. John is wrong. Jesus, how far are you going to go with this? Call the devil and Satan, deceiver of the world. So who is the devil? That old serpent. Where from? Genesis 3. And again, Revelation 22. He sees the dragon, the old serpent, who is the devil. So you can't be faithful to the New Testament without affirming the Old Testament, specifically Genesis chapters 1-11 are history, actual history, because the New Testament is built on the foundation of the historicity of Genesis 1-11, because Jesus even says, as it was in the days of Noah, so too shall it be in the days of the Son of Man. But Lord, there was no Noah, or if there was a Noah, it's only a local flood. So I don't know, Lord, I'm sorry, but you had to wait for 21st century theologians and scholars to recapitulate to modern scientific theories that are not based on facts. Sorry, Lord, you came down at the wrong time frame. Blasphemous, man. Right. It's a blasphemous doctrine. It's blasphemous.
But there's so many good points right there. Someone needs to make that all into a clip. We will too, and we're going to premiere this on the weekend as well, like we did with the previous seminar. And so it's good that so many seem to be blessed by this. And that's what we want to do, is we want to equip people. And Sam, the approach I ended up taking when I got on the debate scene, because you kind of mentioned it here in your afterthoughts, that I did my best to understand the terminology that the evolutionists use. And then when I debate them, I can spar with them in their own arena and then use that terminology, use those arguments against them to show that the young earth creation position is actually more scientifically rigorous. And I thought that is the best way, I think, for me at least, to fight fire with fire. And that way they're going to be forced to address our toughest challenges. But what you said, I just love the verse here. I pulled it up again, brother. Matthew 23:35.
Well, I'll bring it up now.
Because everything you said just correlates so well with Paul, with Peter, with Jesus, with the apostles. And then Jesus clearly pointing to Abel as a reference, as being a historical figure, which correlates so nicely with all the other verses, the ones you read with Peter, obviously referring and speaking about Adam and Eve as historical figures, not mythical figures. And yet you have Jesus going right back to Abel, who is the son of mythical parents. I mean, if Adam and Eve weren't his real parents, then who were? No, it's because Adam and Eve were real historical figures, and creation basically goes right back to before the Cain and Abel event. There we go. Yeah. Such a powerful verse.
This is the one that bothered me, because people say, well, Jesus is accommodating people and their creation motifs and myths. This is what they called it, the accommodation view of inspiration. God meets people where they're at. God will then take their myths, use them to redeem them, right? And use those myths to point to a greater spiritual truth. So some will say, well, yeah, Jesus talking to Jews who believe Genesis history. But that won't work. Go back and watch the first session they did with me. You guys want to make a clip? You guys can do it. Because Jesus is saying that generation that is opposing him, that's going to hand him over to be killed. In fact, I'm going to start at 32 so you guys can see. And it's also in Luke 11:50-51. All right. He says that generation that's going to hand Jesus over to be killed, they will be that generation that reaches what I called in that first part. Sorry, guys, we're belaboring the point. We still have a good crowd. You guys are troopers, like over 3 hours. We had about 700 for you guys, man. That's good for me. That's my numbers. But I want more for you guys. That's why I'm saying good numbers. I want thousands to watch you guys. But guys, I want to repeat. Jesus saying there's a debt ceiling of how much sin God will tolerate. Once you reach that debt ceiling, the limit of sin, then God hands you over destruction and will punish you and remove you from his sight. So what Jesus is saying is, you're that generation that will hit the debt ceiling of all the sins that your fathers committed and all the murder that your fathers committed. And instead of repenting, you continue their footsteps. So now you'll be that final generation that I put up with, because you're going to reach that debt ceiling of how much sin I tolerate, and I'll hand you over destruction. That's why God destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. But who was their first father who committed the first crime, pretty much the first murder? Look, right here. I'm using only the Revised Standard Version, not the King James, because it has the Apocrypha Deuterocanonical. So you see where I'm going with this. Fill up, then, the measure of your fathers. See? You're going to fill it up. You continue in the steps of your fathers. They were wicked, they were evil, they were immoral, they were murderous, and each generation after them continued, and it ends with you. The buck stops here, and that's it. I'm done. I won't put up with it anymore. All right, well, what were the sins of their fathers that they are also filling up and imitating and walking in their shoes? You serpents, you brood of vipers, how are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Therefore, I send you prophets. So he's prophesying, not only will you hand me over to be killed, you're even going to kill and persecute those I sent after me. I send you prophets. Side note, Jesus is claiming to be God, because only God in heaven sends prophets on earth. Jesus says, I'm going to send you prophets. Wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify. Some you will scourge in your synagogues, persecute from town to town. Why? That upon you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of innocent Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered. Now, it was their ancestors that murdered him, but because they continue in the sins of their ancestors, corporate solidarity, they share in their guilt. Now, brothers, we're going to have a problem. We know Jesus was killed. That's an historical fact. We know some of the disciples were killed. That's an historical fact. We know Zechariah was killed. That's a historical fact. But he says, you share in the guilt of Abel being murdered. Well, if Abel did not exist, Jesus is condemning them for a murder that never took place. That would be unjust and wicked on his part. Why are you punishing us for a murder that never took place?
Right.
See? You can't get around that.
You can't.
So, can't get around that. And then Paul tells you the serpent deceived Eve, meaning he believed Genesis 3 is history. John tells you that serpent in Genesis 3 is the devil. That means he believes the serpent actually did what Genesis 3 says he did to Eve, and that was Satan. But here, the oldest interpretation of Genesis. And by the way, up until the 1880s, and Donnie knows this, all the Protestant Bibles had the Apocrypha. They didn't consider them to be on the level of the Old Testament, but they still included them and read them, because a lot of the New Testament assumes what they call the Apocrypha. The oldest interpretation of who the serpent was, the oldest interpretation, a Jewish interpretation before the time of Christ, is that that serpent was the devil. Here, Wisdom 2, 23, 24. For God created man for incorruption. That's Genesis. He didn't create you to die. And the day you eat of the tree, that's when you're going to die. Made him in the image of his own eternity. That's Genesis 1. Let us make man in our image. But through the devil's envy, death entered the world. And those who belong to his party experience it. Well, if Genesis 3 is not history, this did not happen. The devil, the serpent, did not tempt them out of envy and cause them to sin and die. You make a joke out of your faith in your Bible. That's it. We're done.
Brother, you know what I call that? Mic drop.
You've been having mic drops for the last 3 hours, brother.
Well, that was the best mic drop of all, because even if I wanted to pretend to have a rebuttal and be devil's advocate, I wouldn't have one. I mean, any objective thinking theistic evolutionist needs to look at that. Look at the science that we just presented for the last 3.5 hours or so, and just drop this nonsensical idea that you're related to chimpanzees and banana plants. It's not scriptural. You know, they want to debate this question. Is evolution compatible with the Bible? Is evolution even compatible with science? You're demonstrating exactly what the Bible clearly says. And that's what I've been saying for years when Inspiring Philosophy was wanting to debate the topic with people. Is evolution compatible with scripture? I was like, well, you know what? You've done that with many good creationists who did an excellent job. Dr. Marcus Ross, if you've ever seen that one, he did a phenomenal job against IP. Let's debate, is evolution compatible with science? Because as you'll see, as has been shown in the last couple of debates on Modern Day Debate, all they can do is dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. The evidence for young earth creation is phenomenal. And the evidence from scripture, as you just demonstrated, is so clear.
Amen. Yeah, I love that comedy. You keep mentioning it. I was watching it the other day. It's one of my favorites, bro.
Ben
Dodgeball.
Stiller. Ben Stiller. Yeah. He's pretty jacked in that too, eh?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And then unfortunately he went my route. When he lost, he started stuffing and became a fatty. You know, fatty make a funny? Because all Chuck Norris. Remember that scene? Yeah, you Chuck Norris. But yeah, glory to God.
I wouldn't mess with Chuck Norris. You're just being humble, Hillel Hogan. You look good.
No, you know what, brother?
I got to see those kicks. I got to see your old school kicks from back in the day. Yeah.
Listen, if you pray for me, and within a month, if I get my routine back, I'll be doing videos kicking again. I just got to get in the groove. I'm very tired, lethargic for some reason, because my sleep pattern sucks. I'm trying to get it where I can get in the groove, because I don't know, should I work up in the daytime or night? We'll see. But once I get it figured out, you're going to be saying, Jilu Lee, brother. I want to like Chuck Norris, man, but I like Bruce Lee better.
Yeah, that's it. Well, what about Jean-Claude Van Damme? He was one of my favorites growing up.
Yeah,
Bloodsport, kickboxer.
You know, he was a real martial artist. People thought he was fake. No, footage came out. He fought in tournaments. He fought kickboxing. He was a real legit martial artist who won tournaments. So he's not a joke, because some people say he was lying. No, he's legit. Chuck Norris is also a legit point karate fighter in the 60s, point karate. But yeah, sometimes he exaggerates, and sometimes in a nice way he tries to put down Bruce Lee without trying to put him down. You know, because he was Bruce Lee's student. That's on the record. But it is what it is, man.
What about Steven Seagal?
I don't know, man. There's footage of him. that he was a legit martial Aikido master in Japan, legit, but he let himself become too obese. And then he started resting off his laurels and making a lot of exaggerated claims. But if you see him, there's footage. Young, sleek, lean, Steven Seagal in Japan, he was a master of Aikido. And for a white guy to be teaching Japanese people Aikido, you know he has to be tough because he got challenged.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. That's my struggle too, is the sleep schedule, brother. So as apologists and doing, it's kind of hard to shut off the brains. I mean, I'm always thinking about this stuff, basically live, sleep, dream, eat, creation science. It's really hard to shut off the brain at night. So I feel your pain on that one, Sam.
Yeah. Like right now, should I go do my 6 mile walk, or because it's late, or should I say I'm confused now because I don't want to keep putting it off, saying tomorrow, that's when you get lazy. So I'm in a struggle, bro. We'll see, man. But this is a series. When you want to do a part 3 on any topic, you want to bring Ken, whoever, let me know, because I'm going to start a playlist and they know where to find you guys.
Oh, brother, we are going to break the internet even more with part 3 because we're bringing in reinforcements. Get ready. It's going to be fun.
Let me know. I'm available, even when my daughters will be here for a couple weeks, but still I'm available. I'll be able to do it. So you let me know, Holmes.
Okay. Well, Sam, I really appreciate you giving us the platform. I'm looking forward to having you on the channel again as well. And hope everybody's been blessed. We'll do some more work over the next month, get a bunch more slides together. And this is going to be an ongoing series, just dismantling evolution. So I enjoyed it, Sam. Thanks so much.
You guys are the best. I thank God for you guys destroying evolution. I really do. And I pray you become viral. I give you my word, Lord willing, if PBD invites me again, I will be telling him to reach out to you guys. And you know who needs to hear about you? Joe Rogan. He needs to bring you on. I hope somehow he hears about you guys, because imagine you guys going there, destroying evolution in front of his eyes and bombarding with facts of science, because he's at the door. I've even been told he's visiting church now. He's going to church.
Wow. Praise the Lord.
I hope you get
I would love that. I mean, that'd be a dream come true, because I've watched a lot of his podcasts, as you have as well. He's never had a strong young earth. He's never had a young earth creationist on, especially someone who's fluent in genetics, to go over this data on the Y chromosome, the mitochondrial DNA. And then when Wes Huff was on the program, and I'm not trying to bash Wes Huff here, it's not his expertise, but William Lane Craig was bringing up the hominin fossil record, which we spent about 30 minutes on, these Australopithecines and Homo naledi. And he was inquiring, he was very curious. You could tell Joe Rogan was wondering, how do we as Christians deal with these hominin fossils, these human fossils? And Wes Huff, it's not a specialty, so he didn't really know how to address it as a point. So, I mean, Matt and I would love to be there and just be like, let us blow your mind, Joe Rogan, and we'll show you exactly what these hominin fossils represent. Amen.
I hope it happens. I hope. And if I have a way of reaching out to him, I'll say, bring these guys on. Because if I was Wes, I'd say, hey, look, my forte is something else, but here's a ministry. Contact them. They are masters of the science. You'll be blown away. So we'll see what happens, man. God is good. We want them all to be saved. We want Joe Rogan to find peace in Christ, because as he gets older, he sees there's objective evil in the world. Here, Fauci, I'm going to leave you this. What I've learned in these recent years, we can't trust anything. We can't trust the science. If Dr. Fauci is an indication of science, he destroyed people's confidence in the government and what scientists say and social media. So now the world is primed, because now they're awake. If they've been lying to us about these things, what else have they been lying to us about? Maybe even theories of origins. Maybe they're lying there too, because they don't want us to know the truth, so we don't find the creator. It is like Jesus said, the harvest is ripe. We just need laborers. They're ready.
Amen. Amen. So you can see how many people are hungry for the truth.
Yeah.
And there's other topics too that people have woken up on. Look at the dangers of Zionism, for example. That's a whole other topic, but let's not get started.
I've got a lot of trouble for that one.
Have you seen, I guess we'll wrap it up with this. Have you seen Joe Rogan's kick?
Did he do, that side kick?
Yeah, the spinning back kick or something.
The spinning kick. In fact, Michael J. White, when I like, says that Joe Rogan has the most devastating spinning back kick because he was a Taekwondo master.
Michael J. White, he's a beast too.
Yeah, but you know why? He bashed Bruce Lee. And when I bashed Bruce Lee,
Oh,
I
he
don't like
did?
him.
Why would he do that? I mean, Bruce Lee, he's the man. You know, he started it all.
Well, the thing is, because they go by size. They go, well, and it's true. A great big man will beat a great little man. I mean, it's, size. If you are equal, if you're 220 pounds and I'm a 150 pounder and we're equal, you're going to just beat me on size, not because you're. So it's a fact. So He thinks that Bruce Lee was a great little man, but he never fought in the ring, but he was a legit martial artist, but he didn't fight. So a great big man could take him out. So that's his mindset.
That's his mentality.
Yeah, that's what it is. Maybe in the ring. In the street, I don't care how big you are. Your eyes don't have muscles and your groin doesn't have muscles.
Right. Anything goes in the street. No rules there. Kind of like early UFC days.
Finger jab, mister. What up? There you gone. I'm here. God bless you, brother.
God bless, brother.
Let me know when you want to do part 3.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it already. So God bless you. God bless everyone in the chat. This was fun.
Amen. Lord be with you all. Take care.